Hello, and welcome back to Super Hell, aka the Mystery Spotcast, where two recovering Supernatural fans subject themselves to a rewatch so no one else ever has to watch Supernatural again. My name is Ollie. I use any pronouns, and you can find me on social media at OllieFresh. It's fresh with a PH.
And my name is Klaudia. My pronouns are she, her, and you can find me on social media at Klaudia says, K-A-L-U-D-I-A says.
I log in to our session for us to record, and we were chatting. And we were talking about, I think we were talking about that stupid 9-month cruise. And then we were talking about airplanes. And Claudia was like, have you seen that video of the guy making shrimp and mashed potatoes in the, in the bathroom?
Of a plane?
And I will tell you right now, I was like, I have not seen that. That's crazy. That sounds silly. I was like, oh, that's funny, whatever. And she's like, no. It is one of the most disgusting things ever. And I was like, it's probably not that bad, surely. And I was like, I was sorely mistaken. This is just so you guys, I would really recommend you go watch this video, because if I had to see it, so do you. It's by @barfly7777 on TikTok. This man literally makes, he is in the beginning, he's like, I have a crazy idea. Then he shows himself with a bag of frozen shrimp and a bag of instant mashed potatoes. And he goes into the airplane bathroom and literally in the sink, no bowl, but he has these two, batteries, these 6-volt batteries, these big batteries, hooks, wires up to them, and uses the electricity to make the water in the sink hot, and then puts the shrimp into the sink, and then puts the mashed potatoes in as well, and in the sink, no covering, no protection, just in the bathroom sink, in this airplane, and then he puts it into a bag, goes back to his seat, and eats it with his hands. And I'm sorry,
it's so viscerally disgusting.
I'm sorry, I had to say it because I was like, there was no way that I was going to be able to record an episode and be normal. I'm going to be shaken this whole episode. I'm like, we need an episode of Supernatural where they get to the bottom of this. That guy is a trickster or some sort of creature. That is not normal. We need to get, the boys are focused on, oh, Dean's gonna die, whatever. No, you guys need to focus on this. They need to come back from the dead or whatever it is they're doing. This is what Supernatural Season 16 needs to be about.
No, because, there are so many articles being this thing went viral, but no one has actually spoken to the man. I need to know every step. I need to have an investigation. I need a documentary of, how did he get the idea? Is it real? Did he fake it? Is it made with AI? How did he get the idea? How did he think of it? Has he done crazy shit like this before? I need to get into this man's psyche and go through each thing. Did he get salmonella afterwards? Is he still alive? Has he posted since then?
So I will say one of the big things about him is that there's a video of him cooking chicken in a hotel bathroom, and he is cooking, I'm watching it right now. He is cooking pasta in the sink of a hotel.
Wow.
So it seems like that is his thing, where he goes and cooks food in the bathroom at places, which I'm
wow.
First of all, have your niche. Everyone has their niche, whatever. But in the airplane, the pipes in the airplane is so dirty, and it's just, I'm confounded by this.
Usually every week we end up talking about Thrawn for half an hour. We have been talking about garlic shrimp and mashed potatoes on the plane guy for 30 minutes before recording.
I will say this, we started at 6:15, and it is now 7:15, and we just hit the record button because we have been talking about that basically this whole time.
We also talked about 9-month cruise, but anyway,
that is not important.
It's not important. We have to get to the bottom of garlic shrimp guy.
No, we need to get in touch, and I hate to say this. This is, I think, one of the most foul parts of this video is he has this tub of garlic butter that he opens up. And I'm also how did he get these? First of all, how did he get these batteries and all of these cords through TSA? I know, Claudia, you read an article right before we started recording that was technically none of these are banned, but I'm if I was in my seat and the guy next to me had got up and had a bunch of batteries and cords and went into the bathroom. Like, I would be calling the FBI. I would be I don't know if they would be able to help, but like,
no, because
I'd be calling my congressman.
If I died in a plane crash because some guy tried to make garlic mashed potatoes, garlic shrimp and mashed potatoes in the bathroom, that would be the craziest way to go. Like,
yeah, I'm like, I'm also thinking about a scenario in which, like, a plane crashes and he is the sole survivor because he was in the bathroom for 45 minutes making shrimp. Also, just imagine you have to take a massive dump and you're, like, waiting in line and you're like, I'm gonna pee my pants and poop my pants and shit everywhere on this plane. And only to start smelling shrimp, and then some dude walks out with a barf bag full of shrimp and potatoes. Yeah, like, you imagine being the person who goes in the bathroom after that. You walk into that bathroom, and like,
it's like microwaving fish at work, but worse.
And also, like, if you have a shellfish allergy, and you're like, I really have to go to the bathroom, and
imagine if you die from an allergic reaction because some guy made shrimp in the bathroom on the plane. like again,
so messed up. I'm like, there are so many atrocities happening in the world. We can't pile this on too.
What is? I have to go into this man's psyche. I have to understand, and I understand that it's a type of content and it's for shock and it's for clicks. I get that, but I need to know the specifics of why this and why these specific details and how we got here.
And also, like, I think before, like, if you haven't, I'm telling you right now, you need to pause and go watch this video. Like, go watch it. But not because
we will link to the video, like, in the show notes. We will link to it.
But, and I know that we're doing exactly what this guy wants us to do is by promoting it, but, like, I don't care. I need to get this out there. He needs to be put on a no-fly list. But,
I don't believe in the Patriot Act, and the no-fly list is a bad thing, and all prisons should be abolished. However, before we close the prisons, put him in there. Cause
yeah, he needs.
What the fuck?
I agree. I'm like, what crime has he even committed? I'm like, I don't know. Surely there has to be something. Can we make a new one for this guy?
I think he created a new type of bacteria. Like,
yeah.
I think, like, something like that is the primordial soup for a new universe that he created in the mashed potatoes in that sink. Like,
yeah.
Like,
no. And I also want to preface this with, a lot of the time, there is, like, a lot of, like, unfortunately, there is, I mean, whatever, I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, but there is a lot of, like, fetish content on TikTok that's, like, tries to skirt around being gross, but they'll, like, make food in the toilet and stuff. This is not one of those videos.
No,
like,
it's very clear that it's not.
It is quite clearly, like, it does not engage in any of that, like, edging that those videos kind of do, where they're like, what's gonna happen next? What are you gonna do? Are you gonna put that in the toilet? Like, there's none of that. It's very clearly, like, I'm gonna do this crazy thing. It's not like it's gross. It's gross, but not in that way.
I think it returns us to, like, the classic era of YouTube. And for that, I do appreciate him. But he also deserves to be tried at The Hague.
Yeah, I agree.
What is wrong with this man?
I hope he's okay. Because, like, if you're
Has he posted a video since then?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so he's alive.
He's fine.
Okay, immune system of steel. Maybe they should develop a permanent COVID vaccine from his genes.
That would be, yeah. I think they need to, they could probably cure cancer. Anyway, we have to talk about Supernatural. We have been talking about this, and I said we have to hit record, because we need to get this on tape. We need to commit this to the record.
Yeah, you know, if we come back as, like, a true crime podcast about this man, this is why. This is the genesis.
Anyway.
Okay. Anyways, let's talk about Supernatural Season 3. And
I know we're gonna reference it in talking about this. Like, I know it's gonna come up again.
I know we are. So in case you missed it, we are getting towards the end of Season 3, aka the season that they slid in before the 2007-2008 writer's strike. And Dean, he's realizing he is going to hell, and things are hitting the fan. And much like last week, this week, we have 2 episodes for you that are quite good. They threw it all out on the table, and I was like, oh, I forgot when this show was good.
Yeah, they were writing like they had a deadline, and
why do you write like you're running out of time? Like,
can we not make a Hamilton reference right now? Can we not do this?
What's worse, might not be, Hamilton or the shrimp on the plane?
Well, here's the problem. At least, you know what? Here's the thing. I feel like I'm usually beating the millennial allegations, but I would rather sit with my eyes peeled open 24 hours to watch Hamilton on repeat than watch that video one more time. And I don't even dislike Hamilton. I went through a Hamilton phase. I'm proud. I'll admit it. Like, I don't think it's bad. I just think like it's a little grating.
Oh wow. Anyways, let's get into it. The episode is called Long Distance Call. And it has our classic supernatural opening. There is this man, he's drinking in his living room, the phone rings. It has a weird caller ID. It says, and yes, we're talking landline phones. This is an episode that does not age well considering the fact that we now have cell phones and AI that can mimic people's voices. We'll come back to that. So it has a caller ID. It says SHA33. He answers, and he's talking to this person. He's calling Linda. And he's like, you can't keep calling me. Like, we can't keep doing this, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, can you please, like, come to me, whatever? And he's like, we can't do this. And he's, like, getting upset. Like, he's getting very upset.
It's clearly giving, like, he is cheating on it. There's another woman. Because he keeps saying, like, but what about my wife?
Yeah,
like,
but he's also, like,
woman.
scared and whatever. And you're like, what's going on? And you're like, huh? Like, this doesn't make any sense. He hangs up. She calls again. He tells her to leave him alone. He's, like, getting upset and hangs up again. She calls again, and he rips the phone out of the wall. And he's like, oh, my God. But the phone rings anyway. And clearly something supernatural is occurring. Finally, by the way, content warning for self-harm and suicide in this episode. It happens a lot in Supernatural, but just content warning. Okay. Finally, after this woman has called him a bunch of times, he pulls out a gun and shoots himself. And then it's like, supernatural. And you're like, what the fuck, okay? This is a classic opening.
Also, I'm sorry, but why do you keep a loaded pistol in your desk drawer? Like, that is not proper gun safety. I'm sorry that you're having these issues.
Is the implication, and spoilers for, like, later in the episode, but is the implication that, like, she's been pushing him to kill himself for a bit now, and so that way he has it? That actually... doing it?
Okay, yeah, that actually makes a lot more sense. Okay, yeah, I hope so.
I'm giving the Supernatural writers a lot more credit than they deserve, but...
it's better than just him engaging in just absolutely dreadful gun safety.
Yeah, I mean, this is America. What the fuck is a kilometer? Anyway. Dean is outside on the campus of, like, some university. He's on the phone. And Sam comes over and he's like, hey, this professor, he doesn't know anything. And we don't know who he's been speaking to. And Dean's like, okay, so I was on the phone with Bobby. He told me that there was this case in Ohio and the phones were going, like, crazy. Like, there's, like, computers slipping on and off. Like, it's clearly something supernatural. And
he's also like, no, because he's like, Sam was like, okay. And he's like, yeah. And the guy, like, killed himself. And Sam's like, okay. And I'm like, okay, Sam doesn't care about suicide.
Like, okay, Sam. Jesus.
Okay, problematic Sam.
Yeah, well, he did go to school in Palo Alto, so that's being a tech bro. He has no empathy. Anyway, it's Demon Sam season. Here we come.
Stop. We're not there yet.
He did come back wrong. It is canonical. We haven't gotten there yet. Anyway, so and Sam's like, okay, girl, great, but we are already on a case. And Dean's like, what case? And he's like, yours, to solve the fact that you're gonna go to hell because of the demon deal you made. And Dean's like, listen, we haven't found anything, so what are you gonna do? And he's like, let's, I want to do my job. Like, let's do a case, whatever. And he's like, and I don't want to summon Ruby, because we've gotten to the point in Supernatural where Sam's solution for everything is, well, why don't you just call Ruby up?
No, listen, if I didn't know better, I'd be starting to think that he has a crush on her.
Yeah.
Talking to his wife who played a later iteration of Ruby on this show.
Spoilers. Spoilers for Jared Padalecki's life. Good God. Then Dean just kind of comes out and says it. Dean references the conversation that he had at the end of an episode a while ago with Ruby, where he's like, listen, it doesn't help, like, she can't help us. She literally told me that there's nothing we can do to save me. Yeah. And Sam's like, girl, you kept this secret?
Yeah, because the thing to keep in mind is that, like, Ruby, the only reason Sam is entertaining anything Ruby says, especially at first, was because she was like, I know how to save Dean. So then, as a refresher, that is the conversation she had with Sam. Then later, Dean had a conversation with her where he was like, okay, what is up? Can you actually save me? And she's like, no, I can't, but we actually do need to, like, stop these demons, so let's work together. And Dean was like, okay, fine, whatever. But he never told Sam about that conversation.
Because he's an idiot.
Well, also because he's like, I don't know, I feel like he kind of saw Ruby and was like, okay, I recognize your game. Like, we kind of do have to work together, and if this is what keeps Sam working with you, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I think he's, in this episode, is kind of at the point of like, okay, bitch, I just have to tell you. I have to tell you the truth, dog. We can't keep trying to call Ruby.
And Sam's like, oh, so you lied to me. Oh, so you're a fucking idiot. And Dean's like, well, who's been keeping secrets from who? And I'm like, oh, the girls are fighting. They do this in every season.
Because if you'll remember, in last week's episode of the Mystery Spotcast, I don't remember if it was the episode before. I think it was 2 episodes before this. Dean found out that there's a new demon leader in town who wants Sam's head on a fucking pike. And pike on a spike.
Yeah, and
whatever.
Sam was like, sorry, forgot to tell you. Oopsies.
Yeah. So now Dean is like, girl, you cannot be talking about keeping secrets.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they don't learn this lesson. They just keep doing it.
No. Because on a show that has 15 seasons, it's kind of hard for there to be any meaningful permanent character development. They just kind of circle back around to being the same people every so often. Like, once they start developing in a new way, all of their old traits just kind of come back.
Yeah, it's many thoughts. I'm sure we'll get there when we get to season 15. So
yeah, in 2047, we'll finally get there.
When we're done with our side podcast about the shrimp and the mashed potatoes. Anyways, Sam and Dean, they drive to Milan, Ohio, and they talk to the wife of the man who killed himself. And she's like, yeah, so the phone was ripped from the wall, and Sam looks at the phone and he gets the number, and she's like, okay, listen. And they're like, was there anything weird? Was there anything? She's like, okay, I did hear him talking on the phone to someone named Linda, but I listened in and there was no one on the other end. And they were like, do you know who Linda is? And she's like, kind of regret that I didn't ask. Like, I thought maybe he was cheating on me, but I didn't ask.
This is an important thing to mention for some of you who I realize might be too young to have experienced this, but it used to be that if you had a landline and you had multiple lines, like multiple phones connected to the same line, if one person was on one phone, you could pick up the other phone and listen to their conversation without them knowing. Usually,
you could, if you were very quiet, because, if you moved or made a sound, they could hear you.
Yeah, but that is just important context that was from this. So she's like, yeah, he was on the phone, so I picked up the other landline and listened in.
Wow.
For those of you who may be too young to have experienced that.
Ooh, that made me just feel ancient.
Well, because you are. Because you're a million years old.
Jesus fucking Christ. Anyways. So they're like, that's weird. Okay. And okay. I just want to state in the Supernatural wiki for this episode, it says, in this week's motel room of the week, they ate there.
I like that, but I feel like they could have phrased it. It says, in this week's motel room of the week. It could say, in the motel room of the week. That might be a bit more concise.
It's funny, though. Anyways.
I'm going to go in and I'm going to write a complaint. I could just edit the page. Should I become, like, a wiki editor?
For the Supernatural? Oh, my God.
Yeah. I also, just so you guys know, there's no, we do always say, we love the Supernatural wiki. We do use it.
Shout out to Hbomberguy. I know he's listening.
If he was listening to this,
please don't get me.
If he was listening to this podcast, I'm sorry.
That is a reference to Hbomberguy's 3-hour-long essay about plagiarism on YouTube and content farming, which is actually, it's not just a takedown of James Somerton and Illuminati and several other YouTubers. It is more about, like, the veracity of information online and how we cite things and how we display things is actually quite well done, and you should go watch, and it is worth every minute of it. We are joking about this because we do base our discussion off of the Supernatural wiki, which I hope we have mentioned enough.
Yeah, and to be fair, I will say, it's not like we read it word for word or anything. Every so often we may take a phrase or take something that they phrase well, but I feel like most of the time we do say that's where we, if we do that, we do say that's where it's from.
I do believe we make a comment about them, about the wiki almost every week.
But that being said,
I promise.
That being said, the other thing too, though, is the way that we, now I feel like I'm like defending ourselves like we've been accused of something. No, but the way we use the wiki is very different than a lot of people, because also it's not like this is an article that someone has written. It's like, this is just a description of the episode. And you said we base our episodes off of the wiki, which is not wrong, but it's more like we base our episodes off of the episodes of Supernatural and use the wiki as reference so that when we're talking, we make sure we get all the events in order. So I'm just covering our bases. Please don't come for us.
Hbomberguy is outside my house with a gun. And I appreciate his work. I appreciate his work.
And while you're there, go watch his video on Sherlock, because it's one of my favorite videos of all time. I watch it maybe once a month.
I wanted to bring it up, since this is a show that talks about Supernatural. Unfortunately, at some point we will have to talk about Sherlock. And I will say, his essay about why Sherlock sucks is phenomenal. And it was very vindicating in that it's like, you know, when you watch something for a long time and you expect it to be good and then it doesn't, and it tells you to go fuck yourself, and how there are so many pieces of media that have kind of taken that model of, like, hating its audience and also being bad, and I feel like Sherlock really walked so a lot of girlies could run, and I was very much reminded of how we talk about Supernatural on this show, but the difference is, and I'll say it, sometimes Supernatural is kind of good. Most of the time it's not, but sometimes it's kind of good. And Supernatural never claims to be good. If you expect it to be good, the procedural about two dudes killing demons on the CW, that's on you. You're an idiot. Sherlock, as he talks about in his essay, has a big budget, is on the BBC, has all these famous actors, whatever. If you expect it to be good, that would make sense. And then it isn't good, and then you're mad about it, and then they tell you to go fuck yourself. Like, that makes sense, right? If you expect Supernatural to be good, you're a clown. Like, so that's the difference. And, you know, it is good sometimes. Sherlock has, like, only a couple episodes, and quite possibly none of them are good. So
I would say that I wouldn't say that every Supernatural episode is better than every episode of Sherlock, because there are some real stinker Supernatural episodes, but I would say that the majority of Supernatural episodes are better than any Sherlock episode.
What's worse? Bugs? Or season 4 of Sherlock?
Honestly, at least I laughed during Bugs.
Honestly, what's worse? The boomerang scene of Sherlock or season 8 of Supernatural?
Season 7 was worse, so got that down.
Oh, God. Okay. We return. Doctor Who is also airing right now, so we're really in a space. We're really in a mind place. A mind palace.
You need to stop. Klaudia has just watched this video for the first time recently, so it's very fresh in her mind. This is like the episode of like tangents. I'm so sorry, guys. We've been recording for 28 minutes now.
Well, you know what? People like our tangents. So
we have talked about the first scene and a half.
Okay. Anyways, let's get back to Supernatural. God, I can't believe I just had to think about Sherlock. Anyways,
Klaudia says that kind of stuff like she didn't do it to herself.
yeah, it's fine. Oh, I will also say on the wiki, it describes the decor of the motel, which it doesn't usually do, where they're like, with the decor of starbursts on the room divider and wallpaper and gold circles on the bedspread and curtains. Love the detail. Anyways, so the boys are in this motel room and they're doing their normal research, and they figure out that Linda was the guy's high school sweetheart, and they died in a car accident. Or, not they died. She died in a car accident with him, and he survived. He was a ghost the whole
time.
Surprise! And so she is dead, and he has a significant amount of survivor's guilt. And in doing this research, Sam also looks up the phone number, and he's like, well, this isn't a common phone number. It's the way that it is formatted and whatever, it's over 100 years old.
The phone number in question is also SHA 33.
So they're like, okay, let's go visit the phone company. Let's see what kind of records they have. They're taken to the basement by the manager. His name is Clark Adams. And here we have to do our regular segment called Dean is Problematic, and it's really out of character. And you're like, why? This scene especially was a lot happens here. Yeah. So
we do get to meet one of my favorite characters from favorite new character from this season.
Yeah. So we meet this guy. His name is Stewie Myers. He's your stereotypical IT guy in that he's sitting in front of a computer. And here's the thing. It looks like a computer from like the 70s. And like the console setup looks like the console setup from the fucking Death Star in Star Wars in 1977. Like, I think that's what they tried to make it look like. And he has like a computer, and on his computer, he is downloading porn at work. So when Sam and Dean show up with his boss, he's like, sorry, I think I have a virus, whatever. And Sam and Dean are pretending to be FBI agents. And then Dean points out the website that he is on. If you remember, unfortunately, Dean's very problematic penchant for a certain type of porn of a certain race of woman is referenced here once again.
He does.
And he's talking about how he has a subscription.
It's so foul. He's like, yeah, the subscription to BustyAsianBabes.com. Yeah, it's worth it. Don't ever say that to me ever again, Dean Winchester.
Like, yeah.
Don't ever say that.
What the fuck is wrong with you? Also, why is this in the show? This isn't needed at all.
To be fair, okay, also the other thing, too, is it's like, the manager is walking them downstairs, and he's like, this guy, Stewie, like, he's a guy you want, he's a whiz, like, he's really good at it. But clearly he's, like, the tech shut-in who has, like, bad manners and doesn't know how to interact with people.
There's trash everywhere.
Yeah. But it's just so funny, because it's also, like, I feel like it would be out of character for him to be downloading porn. Like, that, it establishes such a strange character for Stewie. And I know we're, like, harping on this one very minor character who shows up, like, who is only in this episode, but I'm enchanted by him.
I'm defending him. 'Cause you know what? Do everything on the company dime and on company time. But also on their way downstairs, they're going like past all of like the large like computer databases and whatever databases, the banks of the computer, you know,
like the drivers or whatever.
Yeah,
you can tell we're both really technologically
inclined. there's flies downstairs in the basement, and he's like, we have like the manager's like, we have like a hygiene problem. And then when you get to Stewie, he has like a bunch of trash and whatever, and you're like, oh, like clearly it's because of him, and he's not the cleanest of guys. But he's like really nervous because he's like, oh my god, my manager is here, whatever. And his manager's like, hey, these people are like, they're from. Actually, they're not FBI agents. They pretend to be from corporate. Yeah. And they talk about porn for a hot second, and we're reminded, hey everyone, Dean's heterosexual in a problematic way. And you're like, thanks for that. And Sam's like, okay, anyways, can you trace this number? And the tech is like, girl, that's from like 100 years ago. How the fuck would I do that? And Dean decides to get like weirdly aggressive with him. And he's like, you're gonna do what the fuck I say, or else I'm blackmailing you that you were looking at porn on company time. And I'm like, Dean, chill out. I know you're about to die, so like you're having a moment, but like, can you fucking chill?
He doesn't have time for fucking around.
And he's kind of mean about it, and so he's like, okay, I'll see what I can do. And the guy's like, actually, this is kind of weird. This phone number has been used recently to 10 different houses in the past 2 weeks. All from this one house and this one number. And they're like, okay, that's weird. So they cut to Sam in a rental car. Great that he's not using the fucking Impala. And he goes to this house, and he does the most straightforward of things. He just asks them, hi, people have been receiving strange phone calls from your house. Can you explain? And I'm like, I don't know if this is the best way to handle this.
He said they've been receiving strange phone calls. He said, people in the area have been receiving strange phone calls. Have you received any strange phone calls?
And you're like, okay.
I respect that, because I feel like if someone did that to me, like if I was at work and someone came in from phone provider we use, and someone came in and was like, hey, I'm from the company, we've just been having weird things going on, that's like a totally normal thing. I'm like, this is definitely one of Sam's more rational moments.
I guess.
For a very weird phenomena.
Yeah, and then he does ask, like, if there's been any weird voices or pranks or anything on the phone. And the dad who answered the phone, he's like, and his kid is there, and he's like, no, there isn't anything. But then his teenage daughter is behind him, and she looks like freaked the fuck out. And Sam sees it, and he's like, what? And so he's leaving, and she goes outside to talk to him as he's leaving. And the wiki says Sam turns on the sympathetic charm.
Okay, I didn't read it as him having to turn anything on. I think he was just listening and talking.
Yeah, well, and Sam is usually the more empathetic one who's like, hey, I'm here to talk. That's him. So I get it, but okay. And to get her to admit, but basically she's like, hey, I've been getting weird calls, whatever. And she's like, but you wouldn't believe me, whatever. And he's like, try me, whatever. And she admits that she has been getting calls from her mother. And he's like, oh, like, is that a bad thing? And whatever. And she's like, yeah, she died 3 years ago, and it's really freaking me out. And he's like, oh, shit. And then, so he's leaving the house, and Dean calls him. And clearly Dean has done the same thing, gone to one of these another house. And actually, I take back what I said before. It's clear that they have just been going to the houses that have been receiving the calls. They don't know where it's coming from. I'm stupid. Anyway. So Dean calls and is like, yeah, I met this older woman, and she's been getting calls from her husband who died in Korea, and they've been having phone sex. And he's like, yeah, I really been learning new things about, what was it about, like, old people and whatever. And he's like, I don't really want to know. And I'm like, Dean, old people have sex. Get over it. Like, what are you, a child?
I think that's actually kind of beautiful. Of being like, not even the veil of death can keep us from having phone sex. And I respect that. I think that a lot of the times we use the intimacy that the elderly experience as a joke. And I'm like, people love to treat elderly people and older people like they are not still people. So I was like, you know what? Dean is being so disrespectful and, dare I say, ageist.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were making a Ghostfacers joke.
Well, I was. Here's the thing. I think we just need to use the term the veil of death more often. And then of course, after he hangs up, he gets another call. After Dean hangs up, he gets another call. And he is shocked to find who is on the other end of the phone? John Winchester, who, if you remember, is dead. Boo!
Boo!
Why does this bitch keep coming back?
I'm like, fuck John Winchester. Except for John Winchester in the Winchesters. He's the one who got therapy. Yes. Surprise, everyone. This is a daddy issues episode. It's feeling very season 1.
I feel like every episode of this show, even if it isn't about it, is a daddy issues episode.
Hey, now in the later seasons, we get to the mommy issues.
I love it. No, because these two are two people that you can look at and say, yeah, you have complicated relationships with your parents.
Yeah. So Dean tells Sam about the call, and he's like, well, what do I say? Like, he calls back, like, we don't know if is it him or not, whatever. And Sam goes, I don't know, say hello. And Dean's like, hello? You just want me to say hello to the ghost of Dad? And he gets up in a huff and he leaves. And honestly, it is kind of funny. Like, Sam, that was kind of cunty of you.
I know, it's like, I know I said I was beating the millennial allegations, but, like, not to quote a Vine, but, like, that woman who's getting the water bottle poured on her face and she's like, hello? That's Dean.
Oh, wow. When Dean comes back, after storming off and being a little cunt, he comes back later and finds that Sam hasn't found anything in their, like, research of, like, what the fuck is this? And Dean shows him this pamphlet that he found in the town about Thomas Edison. And we cut to a museum. It's clearly a museum for Thomas Edison. And
boo.
Oh, Lord. Boo. History.
Oh, I was booing Thomas Edison.
Yeah, we hate that fucker too. May he rest in shit. Anyway, if you don't know the history of Thomas Edison and the many people that he fucked over, Elon Musk wants to be him so bad. Anyway, so they go to the museum and there's this tour guide who is, in that wiki it calls her an annoying tour guide. She's doing her job. She's being like, hey, like, don't touch things. She's talking about, she's like, yeah, Edison was a really accomplished inventor and very successful, but he was also really into the occult because that was at that time really trendy.
That's why she's annoying, because she's such a big fan of Thomas Edison.
Yeah, and you know what? She could have just been doing her goddamn job. And she's like, she says like the occult or like the spiritual, whatever, like in quotes, and like Dean and Sam find that offensive or whatever, and I'm like, okay, we can't get into that today. And
are you #triggered?
Yeah, he's like, wow, you've insulted my culture, the supernatural, the occult. I'm like, I hate you both of brothers so much.
You've insulted my occulture. Wow, that one did not land how I was hoping it would.
So she's like, so one of the things that Edison wanted to invent was a spirit phone to talk to the dead. And she's like, that's so crazy, right? And she leaves the room, and Sam and Dean stay, and they check it with an EMF meter, and they're like, okay, like it has like a little bit of energy or whatever, but like, why would it start going off now? Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? So they cut back to the motel, and Sam is sleeping, and Dean is clearly up and feeling crazy about the fact that he talked to his dad on the phone. Lo and behold, Dean gets another phone call from John Dipshit Winchester, and John immediately is like, why'd you make this demon deal? This was a bad idea. And then he's like, but I have a way for you to get out of it. Like, you have to
does,
follow my instructions.
He does say something on this that I did make note of.
Oh!
Where it was so fucked up. Where Sam was... John was like, I know about your deal. And Sam's like, oh my god. And Dean's like, I only did it to protect Sammy like you asked me to. And he's like, I know I told you to do that, but I never wanted this. It's your soul. And is clearly sounding like very sad and worried about his son. And I guess John did like technically die for Dean to continue to live. So I'm like, he did love him. But he's just such a fucker about it, you know?
Yeah. And here's the thing. If you're watching it, and if you remember previous episodes where stuff like this has happened, if John Winchester is vocalizing that he cares about his son, not through his actions, but through his words, it feels fake. But you are, and I will say, I gotta hand it to them in the writing and acting in this show. Dean is like, oh my god, like, my dad loves me. My dad is worried about me. My whatever. Like, he's starting to have a breakdown about it. And you, the viewer, are like, John Winchester is a little too nice. And the fact that that's okay for if you remember, when Azazel pretended to be his dad, what did he do? He was a little too nice. How fucked up and crazy is that? That you know it's not John Winchester when he says nice things to Dean. And the sad part is that you see Dean on the phone. He's like, okay, I know how to help you. Here's what you need to do, whatever. And you see Dean, like, go into, like, I'm following Dad's instructions mode. But also, like, Dean feeling more secure, whatever. But he's falling back into the person he was, like, at the beginning of season 1. And it's, like, it's actually, like, sad to watch.
It's very well performed, too. Like,
yeah.
This is this episode has probably some of the best, like, dialogue and back and forth that we've had for a while. I really, really enjoyed that part of this. I feel like this episode really got these characters.
This is a Jeremy Carver and Robert Singer episode. So, you know what? I see it. I see why. So his father's like, I have a way. You have to listen to my instructions, whatever. It cuts to the teenage girl. Her name is Lainey, and that Sam was talking to, and she is on her computer. She's on her desktop with her fucking webcam. We love the 2000s. And she's on Instant Messenger. I love a period piece. And she starts getting...
Don't say that.
She starts getting IMs. Woo! That made me feel old. She starts getting IMs from her mother. And it's like, and it starts to get really, like, aggressive. And her mom keeps being like, I want to see you. I want to see you. Whatever. And she's like, what do you mean? And whatever. And she's like, you know, like, going to the cemetery? And she's like, no, you know what I mean. And she's like, but I'm scared. Like, whatever. And she's like, don't be scared. I'm right here with you. And then the screen goes black. And it then shows her sitting at her desk as if it's, like, the thing from the camera. And her mom standing behind her and putting her hands on her shoulders. And she, like, freaks the fuck out and turns the computer off. And then the computer just starts showing the words, come to me, come to me, come to me, over and over and over. And she's like, oh my god, like, what do I do? We cut to Dean is sitting on the computer, and Sam walks in, and he's like, that girl Lainey called me. Something crazy happened. And Dean is clearly agitated. And he starts showing Sam weather reports of electrical storms that have been everywhere that they have been over the last 2 weeks. And he's like, there's been a demon that's been following us, and I think it's the demon who has my contract, and blah, blah, blah. And, like, he's like, he's starting to lose it.
He's in it now. He's deep in the conspiracy shit.
And Sam's like, hey, like, there weren't any electrical storms, like, following us. Like, we would have noticed that. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't really believe this, whatever. And Dean is like, Dad gave me this exorcism, whatever. And he's like, if Dad, and he's like, you know, maybe Dad picked something up when he was in hell and whatever. And he gave me this exorcism that's, like, from, like, the Middle Ages or whatever, and it's, like, that can kill a demon and whatever, and he's like, this kind of sounds all good, too good to be true, like, are you sure? And Dean's like, whoa. Dean's getting, like, more and more agitated, and he's like, yeah, me and Bobby, like, we checked it out, and, like, maybe it could work, but, like, we're not really sure, like, can you, like, slow down and think about this? Are we sure that that's Dad? And Dean's like, well, I'm waiting on the next call, and Dad will tell me where the demon is, and, you know, maybe, and he can help, whatever, and Sam's like, and they get in a big fight, because Dean's like, oh, so now you don't want to help me? Even though you were all about, like, trying to help me, and now you don't believe in whatever? And here's where it gets dark. Where it gets so dark.
This was another really good scene in this episode.
Yeah. It seems like we don't have any proof. Like, we can't just go on, and he says, on blind faith. And, he's like, please, just, like, don't go anywhere until I get back. And
he says something so fucked up here.
Oh.
Dean
Is it Dean or is it Sam who says it?
Sam says you can't just go on blind faith, and Dean says maybe blind faith is the only thing I have anymore.
Which, let's unpack that for a second.
He says something else, like, to sort of resolve this emotional outburst. He says something later in the episode that I literally wrote down because I was like, we have to talk about this.
Oh, because he says, oh, I have nothing but blind faith to go on. And I feel like this is the point where Sam is like, you're just going back to, like, you know, going on blind faith with our dad the way you always do. It was basically what they say in this conversation. And it's so interesting to me when he's, like, going on blind faith, because the whole thing with Dean is that he doesn't go on blind faith for anything. He doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in anything that he can't see. He doesn't, like, X, Y, and Z, whatever. And except for his dad. The only person is his dad tells him, and he does what his dad tells him to do. And then, you know, his dad kind of left him behind, whatever. And he's been deconstructing that whole time, so he supposedly goes back. And it's so interesting. The only other person that he has blind faith in the future.
Interesting.
It's so interesting.
It's so interesting. And like I said, there's another line that happens later in this episode that I will bring up, but I will stay silent on it for now.
For those of you who can't pick it up, we're talking about Castiel once again.
Oh no, I was actually talking about Jody. I'm just kidding. You should have blind faith in Jody.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only blue life that matters, I will say.
That's the only blue life that matters.
Other than Sonic the Hedgehog.
And U.S. Postal Workers.
And Bluey.
Yeah, that's true. Is Blue from Blue's Clues a cop? Because she solves crimes?
Fuck no. She first of all, she does not solve crimes.
I don't know.
I think she's an anarchist.
Oh, interesting.
She seems, and I don't feel like she's even the kind of anarchist that's like, oh, we need to preserve certain social safety nets. I think she's like, tear it all down.
Yeah, and definitely Magenta is. Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway. Where have we gone with this? Anyways, blind faith? That's so interesting, Dean. Anyway, Dean is #regressing. Which I guess would happen if you heard your dead father's voice. Even if you hunt the supernatural, okay? So, Sam, idiot that he is like, yes, Dean, my brother who doesn't listen to what I say and made a demon deal to save me. And, you know, even though we both do dumb shit to save each other, don't do anything until I get back. I also think that scene is also a very interesting reversion of how their father and Dean always treated Sam, where they were like, hey kid, like they always protected him, and they always whatever, they're like, hey kid, like don't do anything until I get back, like I'll protect you, whatever. And this is the one time where Sam is the one who's like, just stay put and I'll save you or whatever. Basically,
oh my god, I just realized, do you think Sam is having like flashbacks to the mystery spot like in this moment? Where he's like, oh my god, you were literally just dead for 6 months, and now I'm like, you just please just stay in the fucking room.
I think, like, they never address the trauma from that,
No,
like, ever.
The fact that Sam lived the same day, like, 100 times.
They
like,
never,
and
then he lived
like,
for, like, 6 months after in the last loop.
Yeah, it's so, and then that just now didn't happen. We don't talk about that enough,
Like,
because that's so fucked up.
It's crazy. It's bonkers. So idiot that Sam is, he's like, yeah, just, like, don't leave. Like, my brother, who definitely follows directions from anyone other than my dad. And because he's trying to go help that girl, Lainey. Because he's like, I gotta go and, like, do some things. Like, just don't, whatever. I'm like, can you take him with you, whatever? But, of course, Dean won't go with him. So...
And Dean has some choice words when Sam's like, I need to go talk to Lainey to help her. And Dean, because he's angry and evil in this moment, he's like, oh, go have fun with Jailbait. Look out for Chris Hansen.
I forgot about that.
Look out for Chris Hansen while you're there. And I'm like, why? It's one of those things that I'm like, I feel like I can see how how a brother would say that to another brother who is, like, an emotionally constipated adult. Like, I can see how that would happen in real life, but I'm like, did we need to write it?
It was so unnecessary. As, like, it's really in the same category of, like, whenever he makes, like, gay jokes about Sam as well. It's like, huh? Like, you could just insult him without and I'm not saying, like, he has to be PC about it, whatever. It's just, like, he never insults him in a normal way. He's, like, other than insulting, like, his hair or something, like, he never insults him in a normal way. You're like, and why was that chosen? So fucking weird. It also, it takes you out of the scene. You're like, what the fuck?
No, Lily, I was like, I think that it's sort of there to show you, because, like, it's a kind of like an extreme thing to imply.
Yeah,
I
that
think
he's not right in the head.
Yeah, I think that that's what it's meant to imply, is, like, it's kind of supposed to take you out. Because I think if they had framed this as being like, oh, it's a funny joke and you should laugh, I would be a little bit more like, ew. But I am still like, ew, don't say that. But at least this was not framed as being like, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
It was like,
and
oh,
also,
Dean's losing it.
Also, if Dean didn't make jokes like this all the time, and he, like, lashed out and said something crazy like this, I think would make sense. The problem is that he also says stuff like this when he's joking. So you're like, okay, girl. All right. Anyways. Oh, Dean, you are such a dumbass. Anyway, so Sam, I believe he's, like, going, he goes to find Lainey, and, I guess her dad isn't home, or I don't really know.
He's at work,
sorry. He's at work, and it's made clear that, like, he doesn't really give a shit. And he goes to, like, talk to her, and she tells him what has happened, whatever, and she's fucking freaked out. And he's like, oh, okay, this is crazy. And he's like, all right, he's like, you know, don't do anything, don't go anywhere, whatever. And they're like, okay, they're gonna lock stuff down. And
well, he does ask, like, they do have this very frank conversation where he's like, so what did she tell you to do? And the girl, like, doesn't want to say it.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, so, because at this point they're still operating under the assumption of, like, you know, these things might be the people who they say they are.
Yeah.
But she's like, yeah, she told me to, like, take all the pills in my dad's medicine cabinet. And this girl's also giving a very good performance.
She is.
Like, she's crying, and Sam is like, okay, and what did she say? Like, was that what she said? And she's like, she said come to me. And he's like, oh.
Yeah, like, that is apparently the thing that makes the bell go off in his mind. Also because Dean was saying that their father was going to tell him to go to a specific place. At the same time that this is happening, they're having that conversation. Lainey's brother, who's, I don't know, like 7, is in another room, and his toy phone rings. And he answers it. And he's like, oh, hi, mommy, whatever. And clearly his mother is talking to him through a toy phone. And you're like, oh my god, shit.
I know that, like, I'm like, have you guys never interacted with a child before? Because I know he's 7, but he's not stupid. Like,
yeah.
If you're 7 years old, you're kind of old enough to be like, if your mom, who's been dead for 3 years, who's been dead since you were, like, 4.
Yeah, like, I could barely
like,
remember
mommy,
her voice. Like,
I don't know. I feel like that is funny because I feel like this is a very well done episode, but that took me out of it. I was like, I don't believe that this child would immediately recognize his mom and then immediately do exactly what she told him to do.
Yeah, there's a couple questions actually I have. He gets this creepy call on this toy phone, and then it cuts to Dean, who gets the call from John. And John's like, okay, go to this place. And of course, Dean fucking goes, because he's a dipshit. And it cuts back to Lainey and Sam, and Sam's like, girl, that is not your mom. And he's like, okay, we need to lock things down, whatever. And so Lainey's like, okay, and she's going around the house, she's looking for her brother. She's like, where's my brother? And Sam's like, oh, fuck. And like, okay. And then it cuts back to Dean, and Dean is in front of this house with his duffel bag of weapons. And it's cutting back and forth between them, and at this point, Sam is like, okay, like, don't use... He's like, don't use the phone, don't use the computer, just don't do anything. And then it's cutting back and forth between them, and Dean goes into the house, and this other house, he does all the preparations because his father on the phone has told him that the demon is here or coming here. He pours holy water, he paints a devil's trap, he does the salt, he does all the things. And then we cut to Lainey's brother, the little boy, walking into traffic. He steps in front of a moving truck, and Sam yanks him out of the way. I guess Sam got there in the nick of time and yanks him out of the way before he's hit by a semi. You're like, that's okay, the coincidence in timing, but okay. And it is kind of wild because I'm like, the kid isn't hypnotized. Like, it's okay, I guess. So
no, but he's a child, so he's stupid, which is funny. I love when writers, it's not just writers, it's like people in general. I see a lot of children at my job, and people in general love to treat children like they're stupid, but I'm like, they're not stupid, they just don't know as much. But it's like most of the time they have common sense to some degree.
Yeah, and like he's not possessed, you know. So Sam calls Dean, and he's like, okay, I know what it is. It's this thing called a crocotta. We'll get to what that is and what it actually is in real life versus what Supernatural calls it. It is a little wild that Sam is able to identify it just from the information. You know, having watched the Hbomberguy Sherlock episode, it's kind of giving Sherlock writing in that usually in a Supernatural episode, we can kind of tell we can kind of make assumptions based on the clues that are given to us, unless it's a new monster that they're introducing us to. In this case, they're introducing us to a new monster, so they just go, oh, of course, this thing that you know, and these elements that you know. And you're supposed to go, okay. This is a reference to in the Sherlock essay when, in a murder mystery, they give you the elements and you're supposed to be able to figure it out yourself. And, you're supposed to ostensibly be able to figure it out yourself. But the TV show Sherlock on the BBC just doesn't show you shit and then just shows you Sherlock telling you what it was instead of you being a part of the mystery. In this case, you just have Sam going, oh, well, it's a crocotta, and it mimics voices, and that's how it's doing it. I don't think he says much about, like, what a crocotta is or what it does here.
He doesn't. He says it's, like, I think all he mentions is, like, oh, it's trying to, like, eat souls, so it's telling people to kill themselves so that they can steal their souls.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't really make any sense because they're not going to the monster to kill themselves, so I don't know how it's eating the souls. There's a couple things that don't make sense in this episode. And Dean immediately knows what that means, and he's like, oh.
He tells Dean, and Dean's like, oh yeah, obviously.
At first I thought he was joking. And Dean's like, oh, I should have figured it out. And you're like, oh yeah, totally, you should have figured that out. He's like,
I'm like, are we
okay.
the stupid ones? Are we the dummies?
I guess we're stupid. And he's like, oh, the flies at the phone company. It's supposed to imply that these monsters live in filth. And so they go there, and Sam, here's where we have a little preview of soulless Sam. Sam is starting to lose it, I fear. This is also, by the way, like, because season 3 was supposed to be a little bit longer, we were supposed to be dealing with, Dean is dealing with the fact that he's about to go to hell, and Sam came back wrong at the same time. However, they did not have the time to embrace all that, so it was more focused on Dean in this season, but we have these little glimpses of Sam starting to lose it. Anyway, Sam goes there, and he finds the tech guy, and he's like, it's gotta be him, because he lives in filth, you know what I mean? And I'm like, hey, it's a little discriminatory, fine. And Sam, like, threatens him, and he's like, you need to let these people go, you need to whatever. And this poor guy is like, no, it's not me, like, don't kill me, oh my god, whatever. And
he does say, if we're overcharging you for your cable, I can fix that, just don't stab me.
And you're like,
and
damn.
Sam's like, wait a minute.
Sam's like, oh, uh-oh. And right before he's about to kill him, and he's hesitating, the boss, the manager, Clark, comes from behind and knocks Sam out with a baseball bat. And the tech guy's like, oh my god, thank you for saving me, whatever. And then he knocks him out too.
He says, yeah, don't mess with the phone company.
I forgot about that. You're like, okay, lots to unpack here. So we cut to Sam and the tech guy are tied up in the basement. And this Clark guy has like a dagger, and he immediately kills the tech, and his face turns into like these spiky teeth. It kind of looks like how the Leviathans end up looking, I want to say.
That's so true. Rest in peace, Stewie. You were a real one.
No,
I miss
literally.
You.
And he sucks his soul out. It's giving very Dementors. And that is the part where it doesn't make any sense. Because I'm like, if he's feeding off of the souls, how is he feeding off of the souls of the people that just killed themselves in their own home?
That's a great question. Also, if he can kill people and feed off their souls, why doesn't he just kill people?
Again, this episode does not make a lot of sense, but it has a lot of slight things in it.
It's a really good episode if you don't think about it too hard.
Yeah, if you start to think about it, you're like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. Kind of like a Stephen Moffat season of Doctor Who.
You have to stop. You watched that damn Sherlock video and now you don't know how to act.
Listen, we're all regressing, okay? There's a Gravity Falls book coming out. Homestuck is back. David Tennant is back in Doctor Who. People were discoursing about MCU Loki. There's Dan and Phil are collaborating on videos. There's a lot to regress about. Okay, there's a Hunger Games book and movie. There's an Aragon book. There's a Percy Jackson series. We are in the early 2010s, babes. Like, I'm back in the fucking building. We didn't talk about this last episode. Oh wait, we did. Where we talked about how Supernatural might come back.
We did. God, if Supernatural comes back, it'll be so fucking over. If Supernatural comes back, I will be like, actually, Apple Tree Yard was Sherlock season 4. Sherlock season 4 is real. Like, if Supernatural can come back, I believe Sherlock can come back. And I say this because don't get it twisted. I don't want Sherlock to come back. Don't get it twisted. I want Martin Freeman unemployed. But I will begin to believe.
No,
Super Hulock 2.
Super Hulock 2, Electric Boogaloo. No, and I do believe, like, they must exist in symbiosis. Like, it must occur. Anyways, if Apple Tree Yard, if you don't understand what Apple Tree Yard is, you gotta go watch the Hbomberguy Sherlock video. Anyways, back to Supernatural. Sam figures out this monster, the crocotta, was on the phone with him, impersonating Dean. So at what point was that the crocotta impersonating Dean?
Well, when he called him, was like, oh my god, it's a crocotta. Because he called him and he was like, it's a crocotta. And the guy was like, oh yeah, obviously, you need to go to the phone company. Because it was the thing being like, come here so I can beat the fuck out of you.
Yeah. Which is why it doesn't make sense for Dean to be like, oh yeah, of course I know what that is.
And
because Dean would have been like, fuck, I don't know what the fuck that shit is.
And now that also means that Dean does not know that the person on the phone was not their dad.
Yeah. And Clark is like, hey, I can imitate anybody. I can talk on it. And he uses his power to. It says that he uses his power to call another guy.
He says, he goes like, yeah, he's like, oh, I have all this power. Watch this. I'm going to kill your brother. And he places a call to this guy who
I think he's a policeman.
Is he? Or
I
is
think
he
he's a cop.
Or I thought he was like a worker.
Like I don't know. I don't know.
It just showed him in a locker room. I thought he was like some sort of like a manual laborer or something.
I don't know. But
I wasn't paying that close attention, but it's not important.
But basically, he calls this random guy up and he's like, he imitates the voice of his dead daughter, and this guy's like crying, and he's like whatever. He's like, you know, please, like, leave me alone. Like, I'm sorry. I wasn't there at your funeral. Like, he's really guilty. He's whatever. And the crocotta, as the daughter, is like, the guy who killed me, I know who it is. He's at the house. And he's like, what? Huh? Clearly, he is setting up that this guy will go kill Dean. I'm like, damn, this guy, this monster is like devious. Okay. And he then, and this scene is kind of slayful. He then tells Sam, he's like, yeah, I went through people's old phone calls and emails. Now, they don't have recordings of phone calls, so they really only have phone records, so I don't really know what they're trying to say here. Patriot Act, I don't know. And also, they don't have access to email, I guess, because phone companies had access to emails. I mean, they supposedly don't have access, but they're implying that he has access to people's emails, because the question is, like, how does he know all these things to be able to talk to these people? Also, I just realized this means he was having phone sex with that lady.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. That was my first thought, because that's the thing. I was like, it's really sad when you think about it, but you know what? I kind of respect him for being like, maybe I won't tell you to kill yourself. You're kind of fun. Okay.
Like, commit to the bit.
Yeah, like, he kind of ate with that.
Yeah. So, but in this part, he's like, there's a lot of, you know, in this era where we're all connected, there's a lot of information out there. Even when you die, there's a lot of shit out there that people know about you. And I was like, okay, king of internet privacy, warning the girlies. Well,
it's kind of, he's kind of giving, like, the reminder that you get that's like, you need to change your password. It's been 30 days. You have to change your password now. And the interesting thing is, like, he comes about this conversation because Sam is like, Mama, how did you know this? How did you, impersonating someone's daughter is one, like, child daughter is one thing, but impersonating our dad, that's harder. And he's like, well, I went through all your emails and found all your little codes and all your little phrases that you guys used to talk to each other.
Yeah, and he's like, I found your all your different burner phones, and he's also like, you know, like, how did you imitate my dad's voice? And he's like, well, I just listened to people's voicemail their voicemail messages. And I'm like, oh, that's crazy and fucked up. Again, like I said at the beginning of the episode, now that we have AI that can make covers of Toad or Eric Cartman singing any kind of song, nobody would believe this anymore. It would be like, I bet that's an AI cover of my dead husband's voice.
No, because you know what? People are trying to do AI to take the job of artists and actors everywhere. Do not let AI take the job of having phone sex with your wife. Do not let that happen.
And while he's, like, doing this little explanation, Sam is, like, trying to free himself. He's, like, you know, trying to cut his bindings, whatever. And he's like, these people are so stupid. They can delete things. Well, we have records. Tee-hee-hee-hee. And, you're like, okay, he's kind of smart working at the phone company. And, there's also a very slay part of this conversation where he kind of puts out his whole hand here, and he's like, yeah, I could set up at the phone company, because he's like, you know, in the old days, I had to work hard. We had to go uphill both ways. I had to hide in the forest and whisper in somebody's ear as if I was their dead loved one. And every time they came near the forest and try to lure them into the forest, but people had their community to tell them, no, that's a fucking fairy in the forest. And so it was really hard to get our food. But now, in this society where you all say you're more connected, you're more alone than you ever were before, and it's easy pickings. And I was like, he kind of ate with that.
It was. I think especially now where we are having a lot of conversations about, you know, community and about connectivity, I think that it was, like, a weirdly poignant and weirdly timeless thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, I was very impressed with that. I also do like him being like, yeah, I decided to go to remote work. He read 4 Hour Work Week and really went from there.
And he was like, how can I maximize my slay? Oh, I'll work at the phone company. And
he's making TikToks telling people how you can make money fast with minimal effort.
And you know what? Like, he thrived in COVID. He would have thrived in COVID. Like, and you know the other crocotta just, like, wish that they had his slay. Because, like, I mean, I can't even imagine what he would have gotten up to if he had access to AI. This guy, he could have been a really interesting ongoing villain if they didn't make him Monster of the Week.
Yeah, why am I, like, kind of standing?
Yeah, and he kind of ate. Like, I was like, all right, okay. So we cut to, Dean in this guy's house waiting for supposedly a demon to show up, and he hears, like, a car pull up and someone walking in, whatever, and he's like, oh my god, this demon is coming. And we see that man, coming in, and he just straight up shoots at Dean with a shotgun, and Dean's like, whoa, what the fuck? And they get into this crazy all-out brawl fight. And, we cut back to Clark monologuing. I think this is when he, says his slay little line about loneliness, and Sam finally breaks free, just before Clark is about to stab him. It is kind of crazy that, like, he has to just kill him the normal way. You can't just, like, suck out his soul. It's kind of, the rules don't make any sense. And they're fighting. And then it cut back to Dean and the other man, and they're fighting. And they land on top of the devil's trap. And Dean's like, tee-hee-hee-hee-hee, like, this is gonna work now. And he starts reading the exorcism. And according to the wiki, it says the prayer of Saint Benedict of Nursia. Don't know what that is. I guess that's what the special exorcism is supposed to be. And according to this, it is an old exorcism prayer that is no longer used by the Catholic Church. So clearly this monster guy, like, Googled an old exorcism that they wouldn't already know, which I'm like, again, he thought it out. Okay.
The crocotta has become Catholic.
Yeah. And again, I don't know how I guess he listened to calls, but they don't have recorded calls. Like, I don't know how he knows all about the demon deal or whatever, but I guess it's assumed that, like, he listened on people's calls, I guess, or voicemail. I don't know.
Again, it makes sense if you don't think about it too hard.
Yeah.
I think the problem is we're kind of nitpicking, but, like, these really were not questions that came up while we were watching the episode.
Yeah.
Like, we have talked about this on this show before, but I always think that you need to be able to toe the line and say, like, you know what, I could nitpick this, but it was still enjoyable and it still got the points across, even if it wasn't 100% like accurate, or it wasn't 100% like totally makes sense. Yeah. I think as long as it has the vibes and like conveys the information that needs to be conveyed, that's the more important thing. Because I worry about getting into that, like, CinemaSins sort of critique.
Not our
where it's
era
like,
of CinemaSins.
It's like, well, how come this doesn't work like this? This should work like that. Like, girl, shut up. No one cares.
Yeah, I'm just being a bitch. So he starts saying this supposed exorcism, and he's interrupted when the man walks out of the devil's trap and is like, is this what you said to my daughter before you killed her, whatever? And Dean's like, oh shit. What? And like he's crying, there's blood on his face, he's like, whatever, he's like, is this what you said to my daughter, your freaky devil shit, whatever? And they're fighting, and Dean's like, oh my god. And then Sam and Clark are also fighting, and Sam backs Clark, the crocotta, up against the wall, and he's like, oh my god, what do I do? And he basically jams his head against a metal spike in the wall. It's like, oh my god, foreshadowing. That metal rebar always comes back to haunt us.
The rusty nail continues to haunt the narrative.
It's very gruesome. He pushes his head and then he dies, and you're like, oh, I guess he just dies like a regular person? Again, they don't really get into the lore. And Sam kind of makes his face of like, did that kill him? I think. We cut back to Dean. They finished their fight, whatever, and Dean's like, hey, like, I didn't kill your daughter, whatever. The man asks him, he's like, so why are you here? And Dean just like kind of looks around. He's like, I don't know. Like, clearly he's coming out of this haze of like, oh, like, clearly it wasn't my dad. We cut to them back in the motel. Dean is trying to like get all the blood and stuff off his face, whatever, and he like has a big bruise. Sam comes in, he also has a big bruise, whatever, and he's like, you look like shit. And Sam actually says to Dean, he's like, I'm sorry it wasn't Dad. And Dean's like, well, you were right. And he, in a moment of Dean fucking clarity, this scene is, he admits that he wanted to believe it really bad, and he admits that he is scared to go to hell. He's like, I am staring down the barrel of an infinity in hell, and I'm really scared. And I acted like a douchebag and whatever, because I'm really scared. And I know that doesn't justify it, but like, I'm terrified. And he says this was the last act of a desperate man. And then he says,
this, I wonder if you're gonna say the same thing, the line that I have written down.
Oh my god.
Because I have a line written down, and I'm willing to bet you saw the exact same fucking line, and we're like, wait.
Yeah. And he says, this was the last act of a desperate man, but I can't expect anyone to show up with miracles.
He says, I can't expect Dad to show up with a miracle at the last minute. I can't expect anybody. And I was like, yes, you can. There's someone who's coming. There's someone like, with a miracle.
And so, listen, now that you know, now that you've seen that this happens in the show, they are setting it up, okay? Now, granted, they didn't know if the show was going to get canceled at this point, so this really could be the end, whatever, but it isn't. They set up that someone is going to come in with a miracle later. Okay? They are setting it up so when we get to Lazarus Rising, you understand why people feel crazy, because they are setting it up, deeming like, I don't have blind faith in anyone, and I don't believe in miracles, and whatever, and then a miracle happens to him, and then Cass says, why, you don't feel like you deserve to be saved. Do you get it? You understand now?
No, it's so, I'm like, I feel crazy. Like, I heard that line and was like, oh my fucking god. Like, I feel like I'm gonna rip my hair out by how insane this makes me. And then Jensen Ackles will go on stage and be like, I don't want to talk about any of that gay shit.
And you're like, what do you fucking mean? Like, what do you mean?
This is why you were getting your ass blasted in purgatory, okay? Because of shit like this.
And the other thing he says is that the only person that could get me out of this is me. But then in my heart, I'm like, but I know in my head that the person that's gonna get you out of this is fucking Castiel. And I'm like, oh, I feel crazy. I feel bonkers watching this.
And this isn't even the end of the episode. Well, it is kind of, but there's like one more funny line.
And then Sam goes, and me. And it's supposed to be both, like, funny and heartfelt.
he's like, yeah, you can count on me to come with a miracle. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
No, Dean's like, the only one I can count on is myself. And he's like, and me. And Dean looks at him and is like, are you fucking kidding me?
Dean's like, okay, well, the moment's over. Fuck you.
He's literally like, and me. And me. That's what you have to say. I'm here bearing. He literally is like, I'm bearing my heart out. I'm here bearing my soul. And that's the best you have to say. And me.
I'm like,
and
don't
Sam's
be
like,
overcritical, Dean.
Sam's like, did you want a poem? And Dean's like, no, you know what? The moment's over. We're done.
Yeah.
And then he grabs them both a beer and they sit. And the last shot of this episode is them like watching TV together in silence.
From above.
Yeah, it's like, it was weirdly emotional. Like, I was like, wow, that kind of got me.
And there's no music and it's like quiet.
It's like a really well constructed scene.
Also, it's from above.
Shut up. Shut up. You don't think...
You see
Do you
why?
think he was... Do you think he was watching?
Yeah.
Do you think he was... You don't think... No. You don't...
Well, also, the story is told through the eyes of Chuck writing the story. If you think about it.
It's... Oh my god.
Oh, wow. I hate this show. There's a fun fact in here. Apparently this episode shares its name with a Twilight Zone episode.
To quote the Supernatural Wiki, we are not getting copyrighted.
Yeah. We always say, Hbomberguy, don't come to my house.
Yeah, this is not plagiarizing. We are drawing from our source.
Yeah.
Which is disclosed.
Yeah, apparently this all is actually an homage to the Twilight Zone because this is episode 58 of Supernatural and also episode 58 of Twilight Zone. And it is also an episode of the Twilight Zone about using a toy telephone to communicate with a dead relative. And I'm like, oh, that's cute, that's fun. It also shares the name of the short story by the author of I Am Legend. When the story, a woman is called by her deceased husband. And that is what the Twilight Zone episode is based on.
Sorry to nitpick you. I do think it's funny. You're like, the author of I Am Legend, like, Richard Matheson is not a very influential writer in the post-apocalyptic and horror genre.
I don't know why I said, I don't know why I said it
like, some fucker who wrote I Am Legend.
I will also say, apparently this is not the last time that Sam will say, you just say hello, and Dean's like, go fuck yourself. But the other piece is, when they give, like, fake names, I think the fake names they used were Campbell and Raimi. This is a reference to the Evil Dead franchise where the star is Bruce Campbell and the franchise was created by Sam Raimi, apparently. I'm like, I hate the writers of Supernatural sometimes. I'm like, these are some of the weirdest fucking references. But there is something about the crocotta that I found interesting, if I can find the fuck-ass page for it, is that, like, there's a quote from the writers. They are described as, this, I'm going to exactly quote from the wiki now. In Supernatural, the official companion in Season 3, crocottas are described as originating from India and Ethiopia, but evolved to the point where they can shapeshift into human form, changing color and gender at will. There's not a lot of lore about the crocotta, says Jeremy Carver. Truth be told, I'm not sure that Eric Kripke wasn't a little bit concerned that there wasn't enough lore about the crocotta. He kept saying to me, maybe we can find another monster. Maybe we can find another monster. Then he'd say, we just need a monster who can do this, this, and this. And the only monster I could find was the crocotta. Maybe it's a little bit obscure, but it fits the bill in this case. The only time the lore was bent was giving the crocotta the ability to actually control the phone lines in the manner that he did. We took the mimicking and extrapolated. For Supernatural, the monsters are adapted to use their skills in a modern age. So, the original actual monster, is supposed to be an animal that kind of looks like a wolf and a dog. But it's a person who sucks out people's souls and can control phones. And I was like, oh, we've gotten fucked from the plot here.
You know what else I realized?
Yeah.
Sam. So the actor who plays, Stewie is Anjul Nigam,
Yeah.
who is, like, actually a pretty, you know, he is someone in the industry. He's Indian. So is that why Sam assumed he was the monster?
Oh, wow.
That's why Sam assumed, not because he was dirty, because he was...
Actually, they're both bad. It's both bad.
Ooh.
Wow, Supernatural. Okay. And Supernatural's like, see?
maybe Eric Kripke was onto something when saying maybe we should do a different monster.
Yeah,
wow.
Well, and when Supernatural's like, surprise, the monster was the white guy. Instead...
What else is new?
they're like, progressive, we won. And you're like, is it? Also, they did a very weird trope of having the Indian guy be the IT guy. Don't love that.
Yeah, I was like, we get so few non-white characters on this show. Like, every time they are here, I feel like there always has to be a million caveats about how poorly they're treated. And
you're like, many thoughts. I just thought that fact about the monster was wild. That it was like, they were like, we needed a monster that fit the bill. Well, I guess we're gonna have to change it like 8 more times. And granted, that's a normal thing in it, but they were like, this monster usually looks like a dog. It's basically just a guy who can mimic voices and is going to control the phones. Anyways, this episode has a lot of good character work in it. Has a lot of good stuff going on. Logically, a lot that doesn't make sense. Also, a weird amount of problematic things in this episode.
Yeah.
Also a period piece.
It's not a period piece because it was made at the time.
Okay,
if it was
true,
a period
I
piece,
guess.
it would be like if it was made today. Then
you're right.
Isn't it messed up that something could be a period piece if it was made about the 2010s?
Don't tell me that.
I think this may have been pre-2000. This was before 2010. Yeah. I think this was 2008. So this is.
Do you want to tell us about the next episode? Because this one's fucking wild and crazy.
This one is like, girl. I'm gonna say something that I will say at the top. Sweet Magnus Archives reference. I will not say what part of the episode because it's a pretty big spoiler for the Magnus Archives. But for those of you who know, you will know. You will know.
So far, we have referenced Sherlock, Doctor Who, and the Magnus Archives.
Did you guys know that both of us were on Tumblr? Did you guys know? Did you guys know that the two people who run a Supernatural podcast were on Tumblr? I know it might come as a shock to you.
No, me going, wow, this is just like the Hbomberguy Sherlock you thing, and then Ollie immediately following it in our text messages with, wow, this is just like an episode of the Magnus Archives.
No, it's not like an episode of the Magnus Archives. It is like it is like a central. It is something that I'm like imagine basically shot for shot happening.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I'm like, this is, again, those of you who know will immediately know.
Oh.
But I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't listened. But
whenever I eventually listen to the Magnus Archives and be like, what part is like that episode of Supernatural? The Magnus Archives copied Supernatural.
Whoa.
Hbomberguy.
I do want to say there is speaking of the Magnus Archives, there was some really funny art that I did retweet onto our Twitter account. I know I always give Klaudia crap for talking about other things on our shared Twitter accounts, but that being said, there's a piece of art by @Izzy's_trying on Twitter of Dean Winchester going into the Magnus Institute to make a statement, and it is so fucking funny. The concept of that is too good, so I just needed to put that out there. Again, this is the episode of tangents. We are going on so many tangents. We've been recording for so long. We've been here forever.
Some of our viewers have said that our listeners have said
if you were looking at me right now, you better not be.
It's like the crocotta through the screen. Wait, how did he generate an image of the mom?
Wait.
How did he do that? Also, how did he have access to her IM? Because it was just like he can control electricity and computers.
Well, it was probably through the phone company. They probably provide the internet too. It's probably through the landline.
None of this makes any fucking okay. I'm like
me desperately trying to justify it.
How did he? that doesn't make... Okay.
We have to talk about the next episode. We've been here for 8 hours. Speaking of... Funny enough, this episode is called Time Is On My Side. It is season 3, episode 15. A little ironic, considering Dean is running out of time. So that might give you a hint about what this episode is about. It's also the name of a Rolling Stone song. So
why do you hunt like you're running out of time? Okay, and the cringe
Not-
has
okay.
stopped.
we can't be having this many fucking Hamilton references. Get it under control.
We've already referenced Sherlock. Like, it's already full cringe.
We've already referenced Hamilton. This is our second Hamilton reference. Okay. So, the episode starts. We see 2 men walking out of like not like a country club, but like an exclusive kind of club like that. Like, right? And one of them is a doctor, and he's like, they're walking out, and the one guy's like, oh, you can't stay for another drink, and he's like, oh, no, I got a surgery tomorrow morning. It's like, oh, got a boob job? And he's like, oh, no, I wish. No, it's just some old lady who wants the whole deal, you know, the price you pay for youth. But because he's a plastic surgeon and he's giving a woman, like, he also says some very uncool things about her weight and appearance. And I'm like, this guy deserved what happens to him because he was a real asshole. Also, the very real fear that many people have when they go in for any sort of, especially cosmetic surgery, but any sort of surgery in general, that the doctor is not going to be doing things that are above board or is going to be thinking about your body in a sexual way while you are under the knife. Like, that is a very real fear for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it is, like, I would like to think it's not very common, but, like, that is a real thing that people have experienced. So I don't know. This is one of those things that I'm weirdly passionate about, but I'm like, when this guy was like, oh, I wish it was a boob job, I was like, and I wish you would die. And my wish did come true, because we see this doctor going to his car, and he has, like, a nice expensive car, and he clicks the button, and he opens the trunk to put his stuff in, and we see a shot from, like, underneath the car, and we see a pair of feet standing right behind him wearing all black. And then we cut to his face. We don't actually see...
I just want to say in this scene, I forgot what this episode was about. So for a second I was like, oh my god, Crowley? Are we already gotten to Crowley? And I was like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. He's not in this season. But for like a hot second, I was like, Crowley!
But he opens the trunk. He's in front of the trunk. And suddenly he gets pushed into the trunk, and we see his keys hit the ground, and the door is slammed.
He is the only person who has actually experienced the things that white women on TikTok tell you to be afraid of, that sex traffickers, quote unquote, tell you when they're like, someone's gonna get you in the Target parking lot, and this is what you can do to protect yourself, and this is how you're gonna get trafficked, and blah blah blah. FYI, for those of you listening, that shit is fucking bullshit propaganda, and it's not real. Most of sex trafficking happens with people you know, and that you should be wary of that shit. The only time that has apparently been true or happened is apparently to this guy on Supernatural. Okay, obviously, like, it's happened to, like, some minority of people in real life. But anyways, I'm just saying.
We cut. This is still the cold open, by the way. This is still the opening scene. The same guy, the doctor, is, like, staggering into a hospital. He is barefoot, and he is walking in, and there's blood dripping out, and he's holding his, like, what remains of his shirt over his stomach, and we see a nurse who's in this hospital talking to one of the other people there, and she turns and looks at him, and she's like, okay, hi, sir, yeah, I'm gonna help you, it's all right, let's see what happens, clearly entering, like, nurse mode, and she's like, it's all right, there's not a lot I haven't seen, just show me what happened, and he tries to hold his shirt closed, and she kind of pulls it open, and then we hear this disgusting sound that sounds like wet spaghetti falling on the ground, and he starts, like, freaking out, and we cut to her face just screaming, and then it's like, Supernatural, and we see the title screen, and I'm like, dang, that was kind of fucked up of her to be like, it's okay, and then being like, actually, no, it's not.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, shit. Like,
You know what must have shaken her? We cut. Dean and Sam have a man tied up. And he is tied to a chair and in a devil's trap in what appears to be some sort of dilapidated home, like a cabin or something. Never really gets where they are. Not really important. Dean throws holy water in this guy's face, and Sam is standing right there. And Dean's like, "Are you ready to talk yet? Are you ready to let us know what's going on?" And the demon's like, I swear, I don't know anything. And Dean's like, oh, he doesn't know anything? Should we apologize? Should we apologize, Sam? No, I don't think we should apologize. Who holds my contract? And the demon is like, looks very desperate and like scared. And then suddenly he starts smiling and he has this nasty little face. And he's like, I know who holds your contract. Your mother. And they're like, what? And he's like, yeah, she told me while I was bending her over last night.
Honestly, it was kind
and
of
I
funny.
Was like, it was
I laughed.
Minus 1 point for sexism, plus 1 point for style.
Like, I will also say,
do you think he knew? Like, he was like, he's saying that. Do you think he knew the mommy issues that would pull up?
Yeah, I was like, of all the jokes to make, not the one. Like,
we all know that one friend who doesn't play about making mommy jokes about making your mom jokes to the Winchesters.
No, and here's another thing, like, this part in this scene really does emphasize how fucking scary Sam and Dean are. Like, because they are torturing this guy, and they're willing to, like, I'm like, hey guys, what about his vessel? Like, hey guys, his vessel. Hey, his vessel, guys, that's a real guy.
Yeah. I think to be fair, like, it's kind of implied, like, they're only doing things to him that would hurt a demon. Because, like, they're only throwing holy water. They're not, like, actually,
yeah,
like,
but he starts, like, coughing
dude.
up blood and stuff.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just not gonna interrogate that too much.
And, like, there are times where you're like, oh, Sam and Dean are fucked up and crazy. Well, actually, the end of this episode is one of those times, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, no, this whole episode, I was like, Sam, you are not normal. Dean is also not normal, but
well,
Sam especially. They're both not normal.
This is another episode that you have to put in the bank for later to go, oh, okay, now I understand what's going on.
So, Dean is like, oh my god, fuck you, and throws holy water on him, and he's like, I want a name, or else, like, we'll exorcise you. And the demon is like, I am not scared of you. The only thing I'm scared of is the demon who holds your contract. They're way scarier than you are. I am not gonna be spilling my guts. Die. And Dean and Sam look at each other, and he's like, the demon's like, yeah, well, you know what? You can send me to hell. You can exorcise me. I'll just see you there, Dean, because you can't break out of this. And Sam looks at Dean, and he's like, do you still want me to do it? And Dean's like, yeah, just send him where he can't hurt anybody.
The demon also says, there's a line of people down there waiting to have a word with a Winchester.
Yeah.
And Dean looks kind of freaked out. And
yeah, I think
he's
the
like,
reality...
I can't wait to see you down there. And you're like, oh, shit.
I think the reality of actually going to hell is suddenly with Dean in these last couple episodes. Like, he's like, wait a minute, I'm actually gonna have to go to hell, aren't I? So Sam reads off the exorcism and sends the demon to hell. And yeah, it's just fucked up. And then
It is.
Later it cuts. Sam and Dean are talking, and they're talking about how they, like, had to get rid of the body. And Sam, no, it's Dean who's like, yeah, it's crazy. Like, they are really, like, they are riding these vessels really hard. Because it's basically implied, like, they did the exorcism and the guy immediately, like, was already dead. So, like, the demons in recent times have been working their vessels so hard they would be dead anyway. Like, they couldn't have saved them at that point, which I think is the writer's way of being like, it's okay when Sam and Dean kill demons by shooting or stabbing the vessel.
Yeah.
I think they realized they had, like, written themselves into a hole where the boys couldn't actually fight the demons.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's their way of turning it around.
They also were implying here that, like, there's something else going on, that they're really making, like, they're killing these people and they're whatever, because, like, these demons, like Ruby said before, she's like, you know, they're let loose and they get to do whatever they fucking want now, and they're having a grand old time, in a way that they wouldn't normally. And also Lilith she's got plans. She's got things she wants to do, whatever. And so, like, clearly there's something a bit abnormal here.
Yeah. So Sam and Dean are kind of chilling. They're looking through newspapers, trying to find leads. And Sam is like, ooh, look at this. Guy found without a liver. And Dean's like, okay, so he had his organs stolen. I mean, that sucks, but, like, not really our deal. And Sam's like, so get this. His famous catchphrase, so get this. They found bloody fingerprints on the body that weren't his. And Dean's like, okay. He makes a reference to, like, oh my gosh, I think it's like CSI, like, let me check. To quote the Supernatural Wiki, he says, great, my man David Caruso will be stoked to hear it, which is like a reference to CSI Miami. And Sam is like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, the bloody fingerprints. But no. They were able to ID the fingerprints. And Dean's like, oh, do tell. And Sam's like, they were the fingerprints of a man who died in 1981. And Dean is like, oh, shit. Are we doing zombies? Fuck yes. Is this like a Walking Dead situation? I want to do zombies. All right. I won't say no. Let's do it. So they're like a little psyched to do zombies. So yeah, they go to this hospital. It is in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is important for later on. They are pretending to be FBI, and they come in and they are talking to the medical examiner. And they're like, okay, so, like, can we see the body, like, were there scratch marks or anything? And the medical examiner's like, can I just actually see your guys' badges? Because, like, you guys clearly did not read my report. So they show him their badges, which are obviously fake. But he's like, yeah, so you obviously did not read my report. And they're both like, no, we're, like, really smart. And he's like, well, obviously you're not. This was removed with surgical precision. He pulls out the cadaver and lifts up his shirt, and it's like a perfect incision. And he's like, yeah, this was clearly done given not in a correct facility, but it was clearly done by someone who knows what they're doing and knew exactly what they were trying to get. So they also find that there's another patient at the hospital who had woken up like he had no kidney. His kidneys had been stolen. So they go up to talk to this guy, and they're talking to him, and he's like, yeah, the only thing I remember was this guy stealing my kidney. And they're like, okay, well, can you tell us what you saw, what he looked like? And he's like, yeah, so I was doing my thing, and then my kidney got stolen. And they're like, okay, do you remember, like, what happened? He's like, yeah, my kidney got stolen. Like, he's clearly not having it. So they're
he's like, how would I remember? I didn't see shit. Like, yeah. And you're like, okay, fair.
I was too busy getting my kidney stolen. So Sam is like, okay, cool. So they step out, and Sam is like, you know, something that's interesting is that this guy was sewn using silk thread. And Dean's like, that sounds weird. And he's like, yeah, they don't do that anymore because it's a fabric and it led to infection, which is weird now. But another thing to consider is that maggots were found in the body, like in this guy.
And this Dean's scene like, is actually really funny. Dean is eating a sandwich while they're having this scene, and Dean keeps being like, hey, I'm eating. And then Sam's like, and then there were maggots. And he's like, dude, I'm eating. And then Sam's like, and then this one. He's like, I'm eating.
He's like, but Sam is like, yeah, so they used silk threads to sew this guy up. And there were maggots found, which is funny because back in like the 1800s, maggots were used because they thought that they ate like the bad bacteria and left the good bacteria. So they were actually used as like an infection prevention measure. And Dean's like,
it actually worked.
And it worked. And Dean's like, first of all, I'm fucking eating. Second of all, that's really archaic. And then Sam is like, okay, but doesn't it sound kind of familiar? And Dean's like, I mean, like, a little bit, I guess. I don't know. And Sam's like, well, it should. Because Dad's journal found this doctor. Like, Dad's journal talks about this doctor whose name was Doc Benton, who was, like, stealing organs and had found a way to live forever. And, like, he would just replace the organs as soon as they stopped working.
And he was obsessed with alchemy.
He was obsessed with alchemy.
And he wanted to live forever.
And he was from, like, 1891 or some bullshit like that. I don't know if it's important, but it's, like, the 1890s.
The clear part was that, like, he's from the 1800s when, you know, alchemy was big, I guess. Or the occult, or whatever. And he's like, so he was really obsessed with alchemy. And he didn't find the Philosopher's Stone, wasn't able to create that, but did figure out a way to start replacing his body parts and stuff like that. It is at this point, when I was watching this episode, that I remember the first time I watched this episode. Now, as someone who has seen Full Metal Alchemist, this is, watching it now, I remembered what I felt when I watched it then, which was in my freshman year of college, after I had watched Full Metal Alchemist for the first time in my senior year of high school. Or maybe I watched it, my senior year of high school, I think. And I was like, alchemy? Oh, hello? I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. This is incredible. And I was like, well, that's what happens. You can't create the Philosopher's Stone. This is what you have to do. I was like, you know, it's really giving Nina. And if you know that reference, I'm sorry. There are moments where they show little alchemic symbols or whatever, and I'm like, an Ouroboros, I know what that is.
I'm happy we have an expert on the scene.
Area weeb won't shut the fuck up.
What else is new? No, I'm kidding. So the point is that Doc Benton was someone that their dad had written about in his journal. In fact, in his journal, it had said that John had cut this dude's heart out and killed him. And Sam's like, well, obviously he survived and is clearly abducting healthy young people, like people who are young and healthy, to stay immortal. So that's the tea. That's what's happening. That's the premise of this episode.
Here's the thing that was crazy to me. Because they say Dad cut his heart out, but apparently he survived. I'm like, and they do say, spoiler alert for the rest of the episode, that actually there's no magic involved. He's just using science. And I'm like, okay, so if he's just using science, if his heart was cut out, it doesn't matter if he's figured out a way to replace things surgically and just keep going, then he would not keep going. And here's a point where Area Weeb needs to shut the fuck up. It very much reminded me of when people talk about Kenjaku and JJK. Slight spoilers for the girlies for JJK. When they're like, how does Kenjaku move from body to body? Is the little brain? Does he do brain surgery on itself? Like, how does it work? I was thinking the exact same thing in this episode. I was like, how does it actually work? Because he's like, oh, I had to do a heart transplant on myself. And I'm like, how did you fucking do that? Like, physically how? I need to know the science.
This is literally just like the Magnus Archives anyway.
It's also just like the guy who made the garlic shred.
Oh my god. This is that guy. Okay, that guy, if you had told me he lived without a heart, I would believe it. Shrimp in the airplane guy, you are so scary to
or as
me.
we said before, shrimp hell now.
I don't know if that was recorded, but it's not
I said
shrimp heaven
shrimp
now.
heaven.
It's shrimp hell now.
I can't. The practicalities of this don't make any fucking sense. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I have this thought whenever I read anything. If anybody has read MDZS, Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, The Untamed, etc., when they talk about Song Lan and his eyes or whatever, and he's like, oh yeah, he got the eyes that were ripped out and whatever, and I'm like, but how did the eyes still work if they were ripped out? I know you can transplant eyes, but if you don't have the right I need to know the technical. I fear the tism is. Anyways,
guys, I just burst out laughing. If you know, you know. Anyway,
we're just referencing things that each other doesn't know all the time.
The point is, this guy is a freak. So at this point, Dean is like, I got a call from Bobby, and he told me that a friend of his, Rufus Turner, who is a member of the rogues gallery of Bobby's, like, past harem, like...
Bobby harem anime?
Literally.
Also, when I saw that Rufus, I was like, fuck, finally, some of my favorite supernatural glepshitos.
Yes. But he's like, yeah, Bobby told Dean that his friend Rufus Turner, who is like a hunter who has retired, but still sells some stuff on the side and still like procures stuff for people, had told him that Bobby had put out like basically an APB for Bella and was like, if anyone sees her, y'all need to let me know. So Rufus told Bobby that Bella was spotted in Canaan, Vermont. So Dean is like, okay, Sam, Bella has been spotted. If she has the cult, we have to find her. Like, it is so important that we find her. This, like, could save me. And Sam's like, no, we are staying here in Pennsylvania. And Dean's like, what? Like, I understand that this is bad and we need, like, it's bad, but we really need to do this. Like, this is like life or death. This could save me. This could save me. And Sam is like, Dean, this could save you. And Dean is like, oh, what?
This is once again a Sam may have come back wrong moment.
Yeah. But Sam is like, listen, if this guy can't die and lives forever, then why don't we just figure out how he did it and give it to you? I mean, in order to go to hell, you have to die. And if you can't die, then you can't go to hell. And Dean's like, was this your whole reason for coming here? And Sam's like, well, I mean, you know, and Dean is like, no, that is ridiculous. I don't know what kind of magic this dude is using, but I am not interested. We need to find the cult. That is our only means of stopping this. We need to find the cult. And then we need to find my contract. And Sam is like, oh, what are you going to do with the cult? You're going to shoot the demon? You don't even know where this demon is. You don't know who it is. And Dean's like, okay, fine. Then I'll shoot the hellhounds that are coming for me and give us enough time to find them. Okay?
But also, don't they not have any more of the special bullets?
No, they figured out how to make the special bullets.
About that. This show, this lore. Well, and also Sam is also like, at least this could buy you a little time. And I'm like,
and I'm like, it's immortality. I mean, we don't know how it works at this point, but like, I don't know if like you can just do that.
Like, here's the other thing, and I will be referencing Full Metal Alchemist once again. I do. This is also funny because I do always say that Supernatural is like if Full Metal Alchemist was bad, because it is also about two brothers with a lot of mommy issues and daddy issues at the same time who are abandoned and then do some questionable things to save each other over and over and over again. So when Sam's like, yeah, let's do something questionable with alchemy to save you, I was like, let it all out. Like, I was like, you will never be Edward Elric. You will never be him.
I love sitting here. I'm like, are you winning some?
I'm sorry. I have to bring it up all the time because I'm just like, the similarities between the two are wild to me. Also, it does make me think of that tweet. Have you ever seen the Hamburger Shonen tweet?
No. Why would you think I have?
Okay. Someone was like, hey, do you ever think about the term spaghetti western? When it's like you take like the type of food that describes the country and then describing the genre, and it was like, that's like if you describe Marvel movies, that's like if you were Japanese and you describe Marvel movies with like American food, and so you called it Hamburger Shonen because it's targeted towards young. It's action that's targeted towards young boys, like a shonen anime, and so it's called Hamburger Shonen. And I was like, so Supernatural is like the Hamburger Shonen version of Full Metal Alchemist. Anyways,
we have to.
Sorry,
I see where you got there, and I can appreciate. Yeah,
I think about that tweet at least once a day. At least once.
I love.
Anyways,
that.
Spaghetti Western, Hamburger Shonen. Get into it. It has the same amount of queer baiting too, if you think about it.
Okay. We
sorry,
it's not queer baiting anymore. Now it's real. Death Deal is canon, so it's not queer baiting.
So true.
Anyway, Dean and Sam are at this impasse, and Dean's like, I'm not gonna like leave you here to go off into the woods with some guy who's stealing body parts. We are going. And Sam's like, I'm not leaving. And Dean's like, you know what? Fine. Just don't get killed. Be careful. So Dean leaves to go to Vermont to meet with Rufus. And another thing is Bobby mentioned like a type of whiskey that Rufus liked, and he said what kind it was, but I don't remember. I'm not really an alcohol person, so I don't know what it was. But it was like a very nice, like specific brand that he mentioned. He's like, oh, you should get some of this for Rufus, so he'll talk to you. Meanwhile, Sam stays behind and is gonna defeat this Dr. Benton, or Doc Benton, whatever. We cut, and we see this man, like a young man. He has on a heart monitor, like watch, like a smart watch of the time. For those kids who don't remember watches that just did your heart rate.
I believe this.
It's like
no, this can't be the first Apple Watch.
No.
Oh.
The Apple Watch was not a thing when this was happening.
I will also.
This was just like a heart. I almost said a pacemaker. It's not a pacemaker. This is just like a
I will
heart
also
monitor.
say this part was really done well, cinematographically, because they added a sound effect for it monitoring the heart, which like none of these things actually did. But like for a while, I thought there was like an alarm going off in my house, and then I realized like they added a sound effect to indicate like how clearly that's not something you would hear because then it would get annoying, but like to indicate like how fast his heart was beating at different points. And I was like, oh, they kind of ate with that. Okay,
it was really cool. So this scene goes, there's this jogger, right? He's a young man. He has on this thing that's monitoring his heart rate, and it's going like beep, 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 as you would expect something monitoring a heart rate to go. And he basically gets jumped by this guy and dragged back to this like isolated, nasty cabin. And he wakes up and looks down, and his chest has been cut open. And we don't really actually see a lot of this happening, and I think one is primarily because it would probably be a somewhat complicated scene to actually film. But I feel like the fact that it really only shows the guy's face during it is a helpful horror tool. Like, it makes it a little bit more tense and a little scarier because you're feeling it from his point of view.
Yeah, and they do it with Sam later, too. They it's pretty consistent. Yeah.
But they show, like, this, he has, like, we hear, like, cracking, and we hear the sound of blood, and we see he is getting his chest cut open, and there's, like, spreaders put in to crack his ribs open, and we hear the heart rate monitor going faster, 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 and we see a pair of hands reach into his chest and pull his heart out, and we see the heart beating, and then we cut to the guy's face, and the heart monitor goes flat. And this guy has his heart, and we zoom out and see this guy's face is like a Frankenstein amalgamation that is like his clearly all stitched together from different people. He's like Frankenstein if they flopped. He is clearly deranged. But he has ripped this man's heart out. Yes, he has. Then
his creature makeup was also quite good, I must say.
It was pretty good. It was pretty decent. Like, clearly it was very heavy, like, prosthetic. Not that heavy, but it was heavy for a CW show. Heavy for Supernatural. And they did a pretty good job with it. We see Sam. He has found the cabin. Like, I guess he has tracked the doctor. I think maybe his dad had notes about it, like, in the journal. But he goes to the cabin, and he finds, like, the book and that, like, Doc Benton used, like, that he wrote down his formula in for eternal life. And this is what got me thinking. What I think is implied is that he has this alchemic formula for eternal life, but in order to live, like, and be able to move and be healthy, he needs the new organs. So, like, the organs still die, but he will remain alive.
Yeah, the formula part isn't really clear, because it's like, I guess that keeps your soul alive.
Yeah, it doesn't really, by all accounts, doesn't make sense, because the way they're talking about this formula is, it sounds like the formula is what kept him alive.
Well, because he is, like, impervious to, like, getting shot and stuff, which ends up not making sense. Which is, it's like, oh, okay.
If the organs, if you get shot, wouldn't the organ fail and then you'd have to replace it? Or am I stupid? Whatever. The point is that, I just don't think about it. The point
okay, dwarf in the flask. Sorry. That's a full alchemist.
The fact is that Sam has found his book that has, like, the formula, the alchemical formula, but Sam can't really read it because he's not an alchemist. But he has
I will say, Sam in season 15 could probably read it, because at that point, he's basically just full-on witchcraft. And I bet he could also
Yeah, but alchemy isn't really
but he, like, at that, especially with a lot of the stuff in the Men of Letters bunker, like, he's studied a lot of shit to the point where Rowena is like...
Yeah, he could probably figure it out.
Okay, Slay, like, this is so V1 Sam. Anyway.
So, he also is going, like, through this cabin, and he goes down the stairs into the basement, and he sees this jogger who we saw earlier, dead. Because, you know, his heart was removed. But Sam looks over and is like, oh my god. And he checks the guy's pulse and realizes he's still alive. Or, oh my god, no. Realizes that he is dead. Not still alive. He's dead. And Sam is like, oh fuck. So he's walking around and he sees this girl. And a huge chunk of her arm, like the skin on her arm, is missing. And there's maggots crawling all over the wound. And Sam is like, oh, nasty, stinky. And then he realizes that she's still alive. And he's like, oh no. So he covers her mouth and is like, shh, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. Because the doc is back. And he, like, they sort of sneak out. And he helps this girl, like, get into his car. And he's like, we gotta go. And they drive away. And they run the doctor over with this, like, rental car. It's like a Jeep. They run the guy over, and Sam is like, yeah, fuck you. So, as they're driving away, we see Doc Benton, who has been hit by a car, stand up, and there's a hilarious CGI moment of his head, which is disconnected from his shoulders, snaps back into place, and then it does a cut to the actor, like, to the front, and he is, like, adjusting his head, and it's so clear that it was never actually disconnected. I love television.
I love the CW.
Yeah, it's just too good. So, he has survived being hit by a car. Yes, he has. Dean has arrived at Rufus's home. And he is like, hi, is Rufus here? And a man answers and is like, yeah. And he's like, okay, a Bobby Singer sent me. I'm Dean Winchester. And he goes, okay. And he's like, I'm looking for Bella Talbot. Do you know where she is? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, can you tell me? And he's like, no. And giving these very brusque answers.
It's very Who's like, on First. It's very funny, actually.
He's like, please, can you tell me? And he's like, no. And he's like, listen, man. Bobby said that, you know, you would help me, like, if you would help us find Bella. And he goes, Bobby Singer told me to tell him if I heard anything about this Bella Talbot. I did hear about her, so I told him. That is the end of the interaction. And Dina's like, listen, look, man. And he's like, you don't come to my house and look, man, me. And he comes to the door and is like, do I look like someone who wants to help you right now? And Dean is like, listen, I get that, but I have this bottle of Johnny Walker Blue. It's Johnny Walker Blue, by the way, the alcohol that he is bringing him. It says so in the Supernatural Wiki. Thank you. But he's like, I have this bottle of Johnny Walker Blue, and I'm not much of a whiskey drinker, so I don't know. Is that good? And Rufus kind of laughs. Like, he's like, okay, my man, like, we are serving. We are getting back into it. We are going.
I did also like in this scene that, like, Dean was kind of being an asshole and kind of being like, well, can you tell me this and whatever. And then he's like, do I have to? And why are you being disrespectful? And then Dean was like, oh, okay, yeah. I remembered my home training. Yes, sir. And I'm like, finally, respecting your elders, dipshit.
Yeah, he does say yes, sir, which is slay. Also, I will say, this is very exciting. We are getting positive representation. We are getting positive representation. The first non-villain black character has been introduced, who is a recurring character. Everyone clapped, and Rufus is so slay.
Rufus is so awesome. Also, him and Bobby's interactions are fucking phenomenal.
They definitely.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, like
they're very. Anyway,
they are very. I'm just saying.
I know what you are.
So,
did they go to Vietnam together?
I don't recall. I don't remember.
Was Bobby in Vietnam?
I don't feel like Bobby was. Did Bobby have bone spray?
What?
No. Because he had like draft dodging. I feel like Bobby would have draft dodged.
He named his dog Rumsfeld.
Fuck. I thought, but that was ironic, you know? Anyway. But they come in and they sit down and they start having this conversation over a drink. And he's like, you know, I don't drink anything if it isn't this. You know, I know a lot of things about a lot of people. And I know about your whole situation, Dean. And I gotta tell you, if this doesn't take you out, even if you find the cult, it's just gonna be something else. Like, this cycle does not break. And if you survive this, you've got my future to look forward to. And
here's the thing about that scene
is that he's completely right.
He's not, because they keep fighting. Like, he doesn't ever end up being like a retired hunter who's just drinking and sad. He ends up fighting, and he is right about the part where something else would take you out. A rusty nail.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah.
But also, like, the very depressing idea that, like, well, this is what you have to look forward to.
Yeah, because his whole thing is that he's just, like, sad and alone.
And you're like, I mean, I think at one point that's what happens to Sam in the loop of the mystery spot when he's alone. Like, he's right in some ways. This is one of those knowing the end of the show, watching it now, holy God, kind of deals.
Yeah.
But once again, the ghost of the rusty nail haunts us. Anyway.
Yeah. But basically Rufus is like, you know, I know a lot of people. I've seen how this plays out. And, you know, I don't think that this is gonna save you, quite frankly. And even if it does, it's just gonna be something else that takes you out, or you're gonna end up sad and alone like me. So, yeah. But I'll help you find Bella. And they have this really interesting conversation where he's like, he asks him, he's like, so did you ever get her like fingerprints? And he's like, Rufus is like, oh yeah, no, I got her fingerprints. She definitely had those removed years ago. Like, there's no fingerprints to trace. Hey, Dean, you ever get her ear? And Dean's like, oh, well, I'll try anything once.
And And yeah.
And I was like, I will kill you with hammers, Dean Winchester. You are dying.
Dean, number one, yes, that's a famous gif of him that is everywhere. A second, oh, you'll try anything once, huh?
What about the tender embrace of a man? Anyway, but he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And Rufus is like, well, you know, it's not legally binding here, but overseas, every ears are kind of like fingerprints in the way that they're entirely unique to every person. So all I had to do was get a picture of the side of this woman's face to confirm that that's who she was. And turns out she's got kind of a record in London, in the UK. And he hands Dean this, like, big stack of files. And Dean opens the files and he starts looking and he's like, oh, wow, huh. And then Rufus is like, okay, well, good luck. She's at this hotel in room 39. And Dean's like, oh my god, my man, I'm gonna go and get her ass. So Dean goes to the hotel. He sees Bella and he points a gun at her. He is not messing around. And she's like, I don't know. I'm telling you, the Colt is gone. It's overseas. You're welcome to call my buyer if you can speak Farsi. And he is like rummaging through her room and she goes to like sneak out and he shoots the gun at the wall right next to her head and is like, I'm not playing. We are far past this. You are going to stand right there. And she's like, what? Are you going to kill me? And he's like, oh.
I forgot to say, Bella, where have you been, Loca?
Oh my god.
I'm so sorry. I had to. Anyways, continue.
I'm about to talk about a really fucked up scene and you had to do that.
You named like, my daughter after Loch Ness Monster?
Are you done?
I'm sorry.
This episode is going to be 8 years long because of you. So Dean levels the gun at her head and she's like, what, are you going to shoot me? And he's like, I know exactly what you are. And you make me sick. And she's like, likewise. And he's like, oh, you killed your parents, Bella. Or should I say Abby? You killed your parents when you were 14 because you cut the brake line in their car and everybody thinks you killed them because they were rich and they died and you got rich, huh? And then, this is really, like, fucked up. Bella has a flashback, and we see, like, a young Bella. She's, like, 14. And it is a clip of the man who you assume to be her father coming into her bedroom where she is sitting on the edge of the bed, and he closes and locks the door behind him, which is hinting at a pretty not good situation that Bella, probably rightfully killed his ass for.
You're kind of like, you know what? Slay queen. Like, and did she do anything wrong? No. She fucking didn't.
I didn't see it. But the thing, too, is that she is the only one who knows that that is what happened. So, but he's like, Dean is like, yeah, you killed them in cold blood. And we have this flashback. And she's like, I did because I wanted to kill them and then I got rich. And now I'm rich because of it. So she just lies to Dean and is like, yeah, fuck you. I killed my parents. And Dean notices, he looks up above her head and notices, like, across the door, there is a little, like a little sprig of some plant. And we find out what that is later. But he notices that and he lowers his gun. And he's like, you make me sick. And leaves. And then after he leaves, Bella lifts up her hand and you realize she is holding the motel receipt that Dean and Sam were staying at. So she now knows where they are. And she gets on the phone and she's like, it worked. Dean found me and now I know where they are. So I'll go find them. So that was kind of part of her plan. Which seems like a really ballsy plan, if you ask me.
I was like, damn, like, she's crazy for that.
Dean calls Sam while he's driving, and he's like, listen. And Sam's like, no, listen to me. I have the journal. We can save you. Like, this is only science. There's nothing magical about this. We can figure this out. I'm telling you, this is big. And Dean is like, listen, and then we see the doctor is alive, and he grabs Sam and basically chloroforms him. And Sam drops his BlackBerry in the funny scene. But Sam drops his BlackBerry, and Dean hears him struggling, and he's like, Sam! Oh no! So, we cut. Sam is on a table, like a medical table in this fuck-ass cabin, tied down. His eyes are taped open. And the doctor's like, you know, your dad was really fucking annoying. But it's funny because I was really honored to see that he had left such a long entry about me in his journal, because he'd gone through the journal after he kidnapped Sam. And he's like, you know, it's really funny. But you're right. I mean, he got it right. I mean, this keeps me alive, and then when I need a new body part, I just remove it. Like, you can see my eyes, and his eyes are like kind of this bluish sheen, like they're glazed over. He's like, you know, my eyes are getting a little rough, so I was just thinking maybe I could take something else. And he goes to Sam and basically pulls out a melon baller and digs it. You literally see this rusty ass implement dig underneath Sam's eye. Not all the way, but just like to the tip.
That can't be the right way to extract an eye to put it in your eye socket. Like, that, you can't just scoop it out with a melon. Like, that's not. I
mean, listen, you don't know that.
Like, that can't be. Also, you don't want to get an infection, because then the eye that you're putting in your.
Just use maggots.
Yeah.
That's this guy's logic. Yeah. So, but literally as he is going to remove Sam's eye, Dean shoots him. And the doctor kind of gets blown back, but he stands back up and he looks at Dean and he's like, oh my god, dude, that is not going to affect me. You can shoot me, you can hit me with a car. I am immortal. You're not going to be able to kill me. And then Dean runs over and stabs him. And he's like, dude, I just took... And Dean's like, yeah, you still have a heart? You stole a heart? Well, I just stabbed you in the heart. And it should be doing its job because that knife was full of chloroform. So it won't kill you, but it'll knock you out. And they strap the guy to his own table. And he slowly wakes up and he's like, no, please, I can help you. I can help you get out of this deal. I can read. First of all, how does he know about the deal? But I guess he does because he heard Sam's phone call. Never mind. He overheard Sam on the phone. But he's like, I'm telling you, I can read the symbols for you. I can tell you how to fix it. I can fix it for you. I can do this. I can read it. And he's begging. And Sam looks at Dean and he's like, maybe we should listen. And Dean's like, Sam, whatever he has, I don't fucking want it. Because what he is doing right now is not living. This is sick and twisted, and I'm not doing that. Now help me. And Sam, kind of looks at him and it's like, oh, okay. And it cuts, and Benton, wakes up, and he has a match. So he kind of lights up the room, and he realizes that he's in, a refrigerator, an old refrigerator, and he's buried. And he starts screaming, he's like, no, I can help you! As we see Sam and Dean covering it with dirt, and they're burying him in the ground.
And, I had forgotten about this episode, as I talked about earlier. But, that's how the episode... Does it have that? No, that's not how the episode ends. You think it's how the episode is going to end. Which always means something crazy is going to happen. And I remembered watching this and being like, holy shit. Because normally in Supernatural, they'll make up some fuck-ass thing of cutting off his head or you know, Silver, whatever, will kill this thing, whatever. I'm like, wait, so the only way to kill him, because they don't know really anything about his formula, is to just bury him and hope he never comes out. And I was like, it was legitimately, this is one of those times where you go, oh, sometimes supernatural is scary. And this also is a way of, like, they are showing how Sam and Dean are fucking terrifying. Like, they're terrifying.
I feel like also it's like this guy has killed how many people, so he probably deserves it, but I'm just like, that is also, no, but something else, the other thing this guy says, he's like, I never did anything, like, unnecessary, and the things I did do, like, I tried, like, I sewed them back up, and I put maggots on them to keep them safe and keep them healthy, and I'm like, first of all, dude, you've been alive for how long, and you haven't realized maybe this silk thread and maggots wasn't the best approach?
You couldn't have, like gone on the internet and learned better techniques?
Yeah, like, just because you're from 18 whatever does not mean that you still live
what
there.
have you been doing with your eternal life in between needing new body parts? Like, I just have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I just have a lot of questions. The being buried alive thing, like, I was like,
that's so scary. That is one of my biggest fears.
Literally. Reference to another thing that other people, whatever, that is one of my least favorite moments in Heaven Official's Blessing. Also, when it's implied that he is buried alive for, like, hundreds of years, and I'm like, and he just keeps, like, dying and coming back and dying and coming back, and I was like, between that and also the Old Guard, where they have the woman who is in the coffin at the bottom of the ocean, and she's also immortal, and she just keeps dying and coming back, I'm like, mayhaps, let's stop.
That's messed up.
Yeah, that is what I thought about with this episode, and I was like, there was no other way to kill this guy in all the fucking lore. And I mean, this is when this show used to cook. Like, they were like, this show's scary. What about it? And I was like, oh yeah, this show is scary. Damn. I think it's also, not to get deep or anything, I think it's also supposed to be kind of a foreshadowing for Dean, who is being sent to hell for eternal torment. And in this inescapable thing. Which, when we get to that, I remember watching and then being like, yeah, he was in hell being tortured for 40 years. And I remember being like, that's fucking crazy. Like, that's insane. And being, like, legitimately scared of that. And I was like, okay, foreshadowing.
I think it is interesting how I feel like stuff in this show happens, and, like, the way this show deals with trauma is really interesting, and not necessarily interesting in a good way, but it's like Sam had to relive, like, hundreds of the same day and then 6 months that now just, like, didn't actually happen, and I feel like he's way less traumatized about it than you should be. And I realize it's because it's a TV show.
Yeah.
And, like, it wouldn't be interesting. But I just think it's funny how you have that. And then, like, with the amount of torture Dean goes through when he, spoiler alert, does go to hell. I don't know. Anyway. We cut. It is nighttime at the hotel that the boys are staying at. Or the motel, whatever, Holiday Inn. They're staying at. Bella, who has taken that receipt, figured out where they were, sneaks in with a gun, and she sees them both in bed, and she shoots once, twice, and shoots both of them, which is crazy. But they don't move or make any noise, and she's like, what? So she walks over, and she lifts up the blanket and realizes that there are 2 blow-up sex dolls in their beds instead of them. Which is funny, because if they knew Bella was gonna come to get them, I know Dean was like, okay, Sam, you know what would be really fucking funny for us to put there instead?
Yeah, you know they wanted to do that scene so bad, they didn't have time.
You know Dean was giggling while he was setting this up. But the phone rings, and Bella answers, and it's Dean. And he's like, yeah, I felt your hand in my pocket when you stole the receipt, so I knew you'd be coming for me. I also saw that twig. That was Devil's shoestring, right? There's only one thing that is used to keep at bay. Hellhounds. I also realized that your parents died almost exactly 10 years ago to the day. You made a deal with a demon, and that killed your parents for you. And she, at this point, starts crying, and she's like, yes, like, that's what happens. I tried to use the cult to bargain with the demon, like, so she would lift my contract, but it wasn't enough. And like, we see a flashback of her and the young girl from the earlier episode, Lilith. We see her being like, I can get rid of them for you. Like, to young Bella. She's like, I could get rid of them for you, and you wouldn't even have to pay anything for 10 years. And it cuts back. And Bella is like, I tried to bargain, but it wanted me to kill Sam too. I really need help. I don't know what to do. And Dean looks and realizes it's like 11:57, and he's like, well, it's getting pretty late. And you know, if you'd only been honest with us, we probably would have helped you. And Bella's like, well, just so you know, I realize that, and if I had just given you the colt, you probably would have helped me, and we both could have gotten out of this, because Lilith holds my contract, and yours too. She holds all of the contracts, and she wants Sam dead. And Dean is like, why are you telling me all of this? And she's like, it's over for me, but I just want you to kill Lilith. And then Dean hangs up on her, and the clock strikes midnight, and we see Bella sitting on the bed, and we hear the sound of wolves howling, and she kind of looks down and puts her head in her hands, and the episode ends. And that's the last time we ever see Bella.
And it's also weird because they said, like, they wanted to do more with her character, but they ran out of time before the strike, whatever. So this is, like, how they were like, shit, we gotta wrap it up. Like, she had a bad childhood, and she killed her parents, and then she made the demons go goodbye. And you're like, holy shit. Like, she was clearly supposed to be a bigger character.
Yeah.
And it ends with them being like, oh, well, that sucks for you. It also would have been crazy if she came back in the future, especially considering she's British, and she definitely knew the British men of letters. She definitely knew them.
And it's just funny because I feel like it's also probably because Lauren Cohen, like, went on to be like, you know, an actual actress who, like, was successful, so they probably would have had to actually pay more to get her to come back. But I don't know. I mean, this episode, I think, again, the whole lore, the story didn't exactly make the most sense, but I think that it got the emotional beats across. Like, it did what it had to. I will say I did kind of find, like, the whole, I don't know, I feel like I was kind of bored with a lot of what Sam was doing in this episode. It almost felt like it should have, like, it was like 2 little episodes put together.
Yeah, they were trying to get a lot in there.
Yeah, I liked I liked the scenes with Bella. I liked that I feel very conflicted because I feel like it was clear that they wanted to give Bella at least some sort of proper send-off, but obviously because of the constraints we talked about, it didn't work quite as intended. I think it was still somewhat well written, and I think the character interactions were really good. I think a lot of, like I said, the story of this episode, like the monster of the week was just kind of weak. But I don't know. I thought it was good, and I think this sets us up because next week, the next episode is the finale.
Oh wow! Oh, we're so close. We're so close. Oh.
Do you have anything else to add except for the fact that you need to be on the lookout for our finale episode, our finale coverage?
Wow. I don't have anything. I mean, we are about to enter the last few moments of this show being good. Well, it's good through season 4, I would say.
And some of season 5, I think.
It depends. Just know, you know, Lord, we are about to be so obnoxious. Like, you got a little taste of it today. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you for bearing with us if you made it this
far
into the episode.
Well, you know what? And what's worse? You know, us referencing every other piece of media on the planet, or the guy who made garlic shrimp and mashed potatoes in an airplane bathroom.
I agree. I think that we need to... I think all of this, suffice to say, sure, what that doctor did was bad. Sure, sending people phone calls from their dead relatives is bad, but is it as bad as making shrimp and mashed potatoes in an airplane bathroom?
Oh.
And the answer is absolutely fucking
Shrimp
not.
hell now.
I would... And that is the thesis of this episode.
Anyways, thank you for listening. For more of our cursed supernatural content, you should follow us on social media at Mystery Spotcast. On Twitter, even though it's dying. On Instagram, TikTok, and Tumblr, we're all that same username. You can also ask us cursed supernatural questions in our TikTok Q&A, our Tumblr Ask Box, or by emailing us at themysteryspotcast@gmail.com. If you enjoyed listening to us suffer, please rate the show, leave us a review on any of your, whatever podcast catcher you are using currently that allows for ratings. If you haven't done it already, please do. It really helps us out. That means Apple Podcasts, that means Spotify, Podchaser, Overcast, whatever allows a rating. And also tell a friend. It really helps us. It's like an MLM, like just tell one friend and have them tell one friend. You know how it works. If you want to hear more from us, we're two of the co-hosts of RuPaul's Pod Race, a queer Star Wars podcast. We are still on hiatus on that podcast, but trust we have things coming. I wrote a review of Percy Jackson, if you guys want to read it, that I'm very proud of. Screw talking about Star Wars. I want to talk about Percy Jackson. I wrote a review of the first few episodes and a reading guide if you've never read the books before, and I'm very proud of it if you haven't read it already. But yeah. See you 2 Tuesdays from now for more slaying people, queer baiting things, the supernatural business.